The crowd buzzes with chatter as students file into the Great Hall for the ceremony. But Kang Seo-jun's eyes are locked on something nobody else can see. A glowing white number floats above a classmate's head, ticking down from 10 seconds. Seo-jun blinks, thinking it's a trick of the light. But the number keeps dropping, and a cold certainty settles into his gut. He doesn't know what it means yet, but his body moves before his brain catches up. 5 seconds left, and he shoves the kid hard, sending him stumbling forward just as the massive iron chandelier crashes down. The impact splits the stone floor where the boy had stood, dust exploding outward in a choking cloud. Silence hangs over the hall for a single breath, and then the screaming starts. The boy he pushed is pale as a ghost, staring at the shattered metal and stone that almost crushed him. Seo-jun looks at the space above the boy's head, and the number is gone. His heart pounds, but his face stays steady, and he knows right then that something inside him has changed. The other students gather around the wreckage, voices rising in confusion and panic. Few clap Seo-jun on the back, calling him lucky, saying he must have heard the chain snap. He doesn't correct them. How could he explain it? He saw a countdown to death, plain as daylight, and he stopped it. Shai Academy is a place that grinds ordinary students into hunters, warriors, and mages capable of facing monsters. It sits on a hill overlooking the city of Eos, a sprawling fortress of white stone and iron gates. Students train here from the age of 16, but the profession selection ceremony is what separates the future legends from the failures. Everyone knows the truth. Combat classes are power, and power is everything. If you awaken a rare swordsman profession or a legendary mage class, your future is set. If you get something weak, something common, you might as well go home. Seo-jun stands in the crowd 3 days later, watching the ceremony platform with a knot in his stomach. The selection circle is a massive stone dais, carved with ancient runes that glow faintly blue. Students step into it one by one, and the light reveals their profession, a name suspended in the air for everyone to see. Yu Ji-hwan is up first, Seo-jun's longtime rival, a boy with a smirk that never fades. He walks into the circle like he already owns the world, and the runes flare bright gold. The words that appear make the whole hall erupt. Blaze Knight, a rare combat profession with fire affinity. Ji-hwan raises his fist, and the other students cheer his name like he's already a hero. The teachers nod approvingly, and Ji-hwan steps off the platform with a look aimed straight at Seo-jun. It's a look that says, "Beat that, loser." Seo-jun swallows his nerves and steps into the circle when his name is called. The runes flicker, and a strange chill runs up his spine. A soft silver light surrounds him, different from the bright gold of combat classes. The words that appear make the entire hall go quiet. Fate Seer. Then the laughter starts. Someone in the crowd snorts, and it spreads like a sickness, filling the great hall with mockery. Fate Seer isn't a combat class. It's listed in the ancient registries as legendary, but nobody has seen it in 500 years. The students don't care about history, though. They care about what's useful now. Whispers cut through the noise. Useless. Support class. Waste of a spot. Seo-jun steps off the platform with his jaw tight, but his vision is suddenly full of numbers. Every person in the room has a glowing white timer floating above their head. 60 years on the bully in the third row, 42 on a nervous-looking girl near the window. And there, at the edge of the hall, stands the headmaster, Baek Hyun-woo. The old man's timer reads 30 years, steady and solid. Seo-jun realizes he can see exactly when everyone in this room will die. The power is real, and it's terrifying. Jang Hyuk-soo is the loudest one laughing, a wealthy brat whose father runs one of the biggest guilds in the region. His timer reads 60 years. Plenty of time to be a problem. Seo-jun watches him laughing with his goons and files that number away. Mocking doesn't stop, but Seo-jun's mind is racing with the implications. If he can see death, he can prevent it. And if he can prevent it, he isn't useless at all. One of the teachers, a sour-faced man named Instructor Ma, sneers at Seo-jun as he passes. He mutters something about wasting the academy's resources on a fortune teller. Seo-jun glances up and freezes. The instructor's timer reads 3 months. 90 days left, and the man is walking around like he has all the time in the world. Seo-jun feels the words rise in his throat, a warning he could give right now. He sees the contempt in Instructor Ma's eyes and knows it would change nothing. The man would laugh at him, just like everyone else. He would call it a fantasy, a delusion from a failure of a profession. Seo-jun closes his mouth and lets the man walk away. 3 months, he thinks, and he's going to spend them mocking me. The laughter of the other students still rings in his ears as the ceremony ends. Yu Ji-hwan is surrounded by admirers, already being recruited by guild scouts. Jang Hyuk-soo claps him on the shoulder like they're old friends, both of them throwing pitying glances at Seo-jun, the loser, the Fate Seer, the boy with a power nobody understands. Seo-jun walks to the edge of the hall and leans against the cold stone wall. He can still see the numbers, Every single one of them. A sea of mortality stretching out before him. His own timer hovers just at the edge of his vision, and he squints until it comes into focus. 120 years. A full life, a long one, plenty of time to prove them all wrong. He thinks about the classmate he saved, the chandelier, the 10 seconds that vanished. That wasn't luck, and it wasn't a fluke. It was the first real proof that his power can change outcomes, save lives, alter fate. The laughter still echoes, but it sounds distant now, like noise from another world. He looks at his hands. Ordinary hands, nothing special about them, but they can touch a person and rewrite the end of their story. He doesn't know how yet, not fully, but he saw the number vanish when the boy lived. That means the timer isn't fixed. It can change. If it can change, then everything the world believes about professions is wrong. Seo-jun pushes off the wall and stands straight, his shoulders squaring. His fist clenches at his side, knuckles white. They called him useless. They laughed at his profession. They think he's a joke, a cautionary tale, the bottom of the class. But he can see the one thing nobody else can see. He can see death coming, and he can stop it. Let them laugh, he thinks. Let them mock the Fate Seer. One day soon, they'll be begging him to rewrite their clocks. When that day comes, he's going to remember every single face that sneered at him today. He walks out of the Great Hall with the sound of celebration behind him. The world outside is bright and cold, the wind whipping across the Academy's stone courtyard. Students stream past him, talking about combat stats and guild contracts. None of them look at him twice. That's fine. He doesn't need their attention anymore. He has a power that terrifies even him, a legendary profession hidden behind a useless name. And he has 120 years to become the most dangerous man in this world. The determination burns in his chest like a fire. Kang Seo-jun is going to change his fate, and everyone who laughed, everyone who dismissed him, everyone who thought the Fate Seer was weak, they're about to find out just how wrong they were. The Academy grounds are mostly empty by the time Seo-jun finds a quiet corner. He's been walking for 20 minutes, letting the numbers wash over him. Every person he passes has a timer, and now he can't unsee it. The gardener near the east gate has 41 years left. A kitchen maid hauling a basket of turnips reads 57. Two young instructors arguing about curriculum have 22 and 18. Seo-jun's head is pounding, but he needs to know more. He needs to know if this works on everything. A stray cat lounges on the stone wall near the training yard. It's a scruffy gray thing with a torn ear and a lazy yellow gaze. Seo-jun crouches and watches it. The cat blinks at him. Above its head, a small glowing number floats. 4 years, 2 months, 8 days. The cat yawns and stretches. Seo-jun files the number away and keeps walking. Near the greenhouse, he spots a fat pigeon pecking at crumbs. Its timer reads 1 year, 6 months. A sparrow on the fountain's edge has 11 months. He's not surprised anymore, just intensely focused. The courtyard fountain gurgles, and Seo-jun leans against its stone rim. He watches a fly buzz over the water. The fly's timer is 30 seconds. Seo-jun frowns and squints at it. 20 seconds. The fly lands on the fountain's edge. 10 seconds. Seo-jun holds his breath. 5 seconds. The fly lifts off, zigs left, and smacks straight into a spider web strung between 2 fountain carvings. 0. Spider is on it in half a heartbeat. Seo-jun exhales slowly. The timer was exact, down to the second. He looks up and scans the courtyard again. Passing student has 19 years, 7 months, 3 days. An old professor hobbling toward the library has 4 years, 2 months. The numbers are everywhere, and every single one of them is true. Seo-jun pushes off the fountain and heads toward the training grounds. He needs to see more people, more timers, more data. The afternoon sun is harsh on the packed dirt of the combat training yard. A crowd has gathered around the sparring rings, and the noise is a wall of shouts and clashing steel. Seo-jun threads through the edges of the group, keeping his head down. He's not here to be noticed. He's here to read numbers. A second-year swordsman has 34 years. His sparring opponent, a spear wielder, has 29. A wiry girl with twin daggers reads 51. The crowd parts near the main ring, and Seo-jun's whole body goes still. Choi Min-so is stepping into the sparring circle. She's tall and stone-faced, with short black hair and the kind of posture that says she's been trained since birth. Her reputation is ridiculous. Top of the combat class, perfect technique scores, 3 guild offers already on the table. The students around the ring murmur with respect and envy. Seo-jun barely notices any of that. He's staring at the number above her head. 2 days. Just 2 days. 2 days, 4 hours, and 17 minutes to be exact. And the numbers are ticking down with a terrible, steady rhythm. Min-seo draws her sword and faces her opponent, a burly axe wielder who looks twice her size. Her expression is completely calm. She has no idea. Seo-jun's mouth goes dry. The match begins, and Min Seo dismantles the axe wielder in 9 seconds flat. The crowd erupts. She sheathes her blade and walks off the ring without a word, and the students part for her like water around a stone. Seo-jun pushes forward before he can think about it. He steps directly into her path. She stops and looks down at him with cool, flat eyes. He tells her she's in danger. Min Seo doesn't even blink. She asks what kind of danger. Seo-jun says she has 2 days left to live. The students nearby freeze. Someone snorts. Then the laughter starts. Min Seo's expression doesn't change, but her voice drops a few degrees colder. She tells him she's heard about the Fate Seer from the ceremony. She tells him she doesn't have time for fortune-teller games. Seo-jun says it's not a game, that he can see it, that she needs to be careful. Min Seo steps around him and keeps walking. Over her shoulder, she tells him to focus on his own survival and stop wasting hers. The crowd's laughter follows Seo-jun as he stands alone on the training ground. He watches her disappear into the main building, and the number above her head keeps ticking down. 2 days, 3 hours, 51 minutes. He thinks he's a joke. She's going to die and she thinks he's a joke. Seo-jun clenches his jaw and memorizes the number. He's not going to let it happen. The next day, the Academy announces a field training exercise. Every first-year student is required to participate, and the destination is the Verdant Hollow Dungeon. It's a low-grade dungeon, mostly slimes and minor beasts, the kind of place designed to give students their first real combat experience without too much risk. Seo-jun is assigned to a support squad tasked with carrying medical supplies and recording monster sightings. Min Seo is assigned to the vanguard. Her timer now reads 1 day, 6 hours. Seo-jun packs his gear with grim focus. The dungeon entrance is a shimmering green rift cut into the base of a cliff an hour's march from the academy. Instructors bark orders as students form their squads. The air smells of wet earth and something faintly metallic. Seo-jun stays near the rear of the formation, but his eyes never leave Min Seo. She's at the front, sword drawn, scanning the tree line inside the dungeon's first chamber. Vanguard pushes forward into a wide, mossy cavern lit by glowing blue fungi. Everything is quiet for the first 30 minutes. Then the tunnel forks, and the instructors split the group. Min Seo's squad takes the left passage. Seo-jun's squad takes the right. His heart hammers in his chest as the distance between them grows. The right passage is cramped and damp, filled with skittering cave rats that the combat students dispatch easily. Seo-jun records the kills mechanically, his mind still on Min Seo. Then a tremor shakes the tunnel, and a roar echoes from the left fork. Not a cave rat, something much bigger. The support squad freezes, but Seo-jun is already moving. He shoves past startled students and sprints back toward the fork, ignoring the shouts behind it. The left passage opens into a vast chamber with a cracked stone floor and a ceiling lost in darkness. Min Seo's squad is scattered, and 2 students are already down. In the center of the chamber stands a hulking, stone-skinned troll with fists the size of barrels and a gash of a mouth full of yellowed tusks. Its timer reads 200 years. Min Seo is facing it alone, her sword flashing as she dodges and strikes, but her attacks barely chip the creature's hide. Seo-jun sees her timer. 4 minutes. She dodges a blow that craters the stone where she stood. 2 minutes. She lunges, drives her blade into the troll's knee, and it howls and backhands her into the cavern wall. She crumples. 30 seconds. Seo-jun doesn't think. He just runs. The troll raises its fist for the killing blow, and Seo-jun throws himself between them. His hand slams against Min Seo's shoulder. He focuses harder than he's ever focused in his life, and the numbers inside him burn. He can see the timer, the 2 days that already shriveled to seconds, and he reaches for it with something he doesn't have a name for. He rewrites it. The timer shatters and reforms. 2 days become 60 years. The change rips through him like a blade of ice, and he gasps. But it's done. Troll's fist comes down. An instructor's fireball catches the beast square in the face before the blow lands. And 3 senior combat instructors swarm the chamber. The troll bellows and turns to face the new threat. Seo-jun drags Min Seo away from the wall. She's dazed and bleeding from a gash on her temple, but she's alive. Her timer is 60 years, steady and bright. She stares at him with unfocused eyes and asks what he just did. He tells her he saved her. The instructors drive the troll back into the deeper tunnels, and the surviving students are evacuated. Min Seo is carried out on a stretcher, and Seo-jun walks beside her the whole way. Nobody is laughing now. Back at the academy, the debriefing room is a grim stone chamber lit by mage lanterns that cast harsh white light on every face. 3 instructors sit at a long table, and Seo-jun stands in front of them like a prisoner at trial. The head instructor, a gray-bearded man named Kang Seo-jun, asks how Seo-jun knew to run toward the left fork. Seo-jun's pulse is steady, but his mind is racing. He can't tell them the truth. The headmaster's warning hasn't come yet, but Seo-jun already knows this power would terrify people. So he lies. He tells them he had a bad feeling, a sixth sense that something was wrong. He tells them he can't explain it, that it's just instinct. Instructor Kang frowns and asks if this sixth sense happens often. Seo-jun says it's happened twice now, once with the chandelier and once in the dungeon. The instructors exchange glances. Seo, bandaged and seated at the side of the room, speaks up for the first time. She says Seo-jun reached her before anyone else, that he didn't hesitate, that he put himself between her and the troll. She says she doesn't know what he is, but she owes him her life. The room goes quiet. Instructor Kang dismisses Seo-jun with a warning to report any further instincts immediately. Seo-jun nods and walks out with his spine straight and his hands steady. He's almost to the dormitory wing when a student aide stops him. The headmaster wants to see him, right now. The headmaster's office is at the top of the central tower, behind a heavy oak door carved with the academy's crest. Seo-jun knocks, and Baek Hyun-woo's quiet voice tells him to enter. The room is circular and lined with bookshelves that stretch from floor to ceiling. A single arched window looks out over the academy's stone courtyards. The headmaster sits behind a plain wooden desk, with his hands folded. His timer still reads 30 years. He gestures for Seo-jun to sit. The old man studies him for a long moment before speaking. He asks Seo-jun if he knows what the Fate Seer actually is. Seo-jun says he's been told it's a useless support class. The headmaster's smile is thin and without humor. He says the world forgot, but the academy remembers. He says the Fate Seer is not a support class. It's a legendary profession. Legendary, not rare. Legendary, not common. The last Fate Seer walked this world 500 years ago, and that man rewrote the destinies of kings. Seo-jun's breath catches in his throat. Headmaster leans forward, and his eyes are sharp as broken glass. He tells Seo-jun that what he did in the dungeon today was not instinct. It was power, real power. And there are forces in this world that would do anything to control it. Forces that have been waiting for a new Fate Seer to appear. He tells Seo-jun to keep his ability hidden, to trust no one outside this room, and to train like his life depends on it. Seo-jun asks why the headmaster is telling him this. Baek Hyun-woo says it's because 500 years ago, the last Fate Seer was his ancestor, and that man was murdered by the organization that hunts them still. The room feels 10 degrees colder. Seo-jun looks at the old man's timer, 30 years, and wonders how many secrets the headmaster is carrying to his grave. The headmaster tells him to report to the East Library tomorrow at dawn. They have work to do. Seo-jun stands and bows. At the door, he pauses and asks one more question. He asks what the organization is called. The headmaster's voice is barely a whisper. Shadow Hand. And they never stop hunting. Seo-jun doesn't sleep that night. He lies on his narrow dormitory cot and stares at the ceiling beams, watching the darkness press down like a held breath. The headmaster's words loop in his skull. Legendary profession. Last one murdered. Shadow Hand never stops hunting. He's 15 years old, and an organization that kills Fate Seers already wants him dead. Great! Dawn comes gray and cold through the dormitory's single-slit window. Seo-jun pulls on his academy tunic and walks through empty stone corridors while the rest of the students are still snoring. The East Library is a squat building wedged between two older towers, half forgotten and covered in ivy. Nobody comes here. The heavy door groans when he pushes it open. Inside, the air smells of old paper and candle wax, and something sharper underneath, like ozone before a storm. Headmaster Baek Hyun-woo is already there, standing beside a reading table littered with scrolls, so ancient the edges have gone brown and brittle. He doesn't waste time with greetings. He asks Seo-jun what he knows about his ability. Seo-jun tells him he can see death timers above living things, that he rewrote Min-seo's timer once, and that it hurt like being stabbed with ice. The headmaster nods and gestures for him to sit. Then he tells Seo-jun everything the academy buried 500 years ago. A Fate Seer doesn't just see death. A Fate Seer sees the thread that connects a living soul to the flow of time itself. The timer Seo-jun sees is the visible end of that thread. Most Fate Seers could only observe, the headmaster explains, flipping open a crumbling codex to a page covered in faded diagrams. But the strongest ones, the ones Shadow Hand murdered, they could do more. They could pull the thread. They could stretch it, shorten it, even tie it to another soul entirely. Seo-jun's jaw tightens. He asks if that means he can save anyone. The headmaster's eyes are grave. He says not anyone. Every rewrite costs something, and the price scales with how much time he adds. A few seconds costs a flicker of energy. 60 years, like what he gave Min-seo. That should have knocked him unconscious for a week. Seo-jun frowns. He was winded, sure, but he walked out of that dungeon on his own 2 feet. The headmaster stares at him for a long moment. He mutters something under his breath about the boy's capacity being abnormal. Then he moves on. The first exercise is a candle. Headmaster lights a single taper and sets it on the table between them. He tells Seo-jun to watch the flame and tell him when it will die. Seo-jun focuses. A white number flickers into existence above the wick. 3 hours, 41 minutes, 12 seconds. He reports it. The headmaster extinguishes the candle early with a pinch of his fingers and asks if the number vanished or changed. Seo-jun says it vanished. The death didn't happen, so the timer blinked out. Good. The headmaster lights another candle. This time he tells Seo-jun to push, not to rewrite, just to nudge, to see if he can make the timer tick a little faster or slower without touching it. Seo-jun squints at the floating digits. Sweat beads on his forehead. He reaches for that cold blade of ice he felt in the dungeon, the thing he doesn't have a name for, and he pushes. The timer stutters. 3 hours becomes 2 hours and 58 minutes. The candle gutters. Seo-jun exhales hard, and the pressure behind his eyes throbs like a migraine made of lightning. The headmaster writes something in a small leather notebook. His expression is unreadable. They train for 3 hours that first morning. Candle after candle, then a potted fern on the windowsill, then a mouse in a small cage the headmaster produces from a cabinet. Each living thing has a slightly different thread, a different texture. The fern's timer is a soft, slow pulse. The mouse's timer is a frantic, skittering thing that makes Seo-jun's teeth ache when he touches it. By the end of the session, Seo-jun is drenched in sweat, and his hands are shaking. But he can shave seconds off a timer without contact now, and that's something. Headmaster dismisses him and tells him to return at the same time tomorrow. No one can know what they're doing here. Seo-jun staggers into the morning sunlight and nearly walks straight into Choi Min-seo. She's leaning against the ivy-covered wall with her arms crossed and a fresh bandage still wrapped around her temple. Her timer floats above her head. 60 years, steady as a heartbeat. She asks if he's been crying. He wipes sweat off his face and tells her it's just training. She snorts and says, "Training for what, a funeral?" Min-seo pushes off the wall and falls into step beside him. She doesn't ask what he was doing in the East Library at dawn, and he doesn't offer. When they reach the main courtyard, she stops and turns to face him. Her voice is quieter than he's ever heard it. She says she remembers what she saw in the dungeon. She remembers her body freezing up, and the troll's fist coming down, and something cold ripping through the air right before everything went bright. She asks him point blank if he saved her life. Seo-jun doesn't lie. He says yes. Min-seo stares at him for 3 full seconds. Then she punches him in the shoulder, hard enough to leave a bruise. She tells him if he ever risks his life for her again without warning her first, she'll kill him herself. Then she walks away toward the combat training grounds without looking back. Seo-jun rubs his shoulder and almost smiles. Almost. The trouble starts that afternoon. Jang Hyuk-soo corners Seo-jun in the dining hall while 100 students are watching. Guy is built like a brick wall stuffed into an academy tunic, and his timer reads 52 years of smug inherited arrogance. He plants himself in Seo-jun's path and says it loud enough for the whole hall to hear. He calls Seo-jun a fraud. He says the Fate Seer is a joke profession, and that Seo-jun only survived the dungeon because the real combat students did all the work. A few of Hyuk-soo's lackeys laugh on cue. Seo-jun tries to step around him, but Hyuk-soo shoves him back. The shove sends Seo-jun stumbling into a table, and a tray of soup clatters to the stone floor. The hall goes quiet. Hyuk-soo grins and says he's issuing a formal challenge. A duel in the training arena. Tomorrow at noon, in front of the entire first-year cohort. He says if Seo-jun is really so special, he should prove it. Seo-jun could refuse. He could walk away and let Hyuk-soo crow about his cowardice for the next 3 years. But he sees the headmaster watching from the dining hall's upper gallery, and he knows this is another test. So he accepts. The dining hall erupts. Hyuk-soo's grin widens into something ugly. He tells Seo-jun to bring a healer, because he's going to need one. The arena is a circular stone pit sunk into the ground behind the main training hall, ringed by wooden bleachers that are packed to bursting by noon the next day. Word traveled fast. Every first year who isn't in a classroom is here, and a few upperclassmen have drifted in to watch the slaughter. Hyuk-soo stands on one side of the pit in full combat gear, a heavy iron sword resting on his shoulder. His profession is Steel Vanguard, a rare combat class that specializes in defense and crushing counterattacks. His timer is 52 years, calm and unchanging. Seo-jun stands on the other side with no weapon and no armor, just his academy tunic and his hands at his sides. The crowd jeers. An instructor steps onto a raised platform and recites the duel rules. No lethal blows. Yield or incapacitation ends the match. Interference means expulsion. Seo-jun barely hears him. He's watching Hyuk-soo's timer and breathing slow and steady. The instructor drops his hand. Hyuk-soo charges. He's fast for a big guy, and his sword comes down in a diagonal slash that would crack ribs if it connected. Seo-jun sidesteps. Not fast, not flashy, just one step to the left at exactly the right moment. The blade shaves past his shoulder and bites into the stone floor. The crowd goes quiet. Hyuk-soo rips the sword free and swings again, a horizontal cut aimed at Seo-jun's throat. Seo-jun ducks under it. He's not reading Hyuk-soo's body language. He's reading the timer. Every attack Hyuk-soo makes causes the faintest flicker in his death timer, a microscopic stutter that happens a split second before the muscle moves. Most people would never see it. Seo-jun sees it like a flare. Hyuk-soo swings again and again, a barrage of heavy blows that should have pulverized a non-combat class 3 times over. Seo-jun steps, ducks, pivots, and sidesteps. His feet don't stop moving. He doesn't throw a single punch. He doesn't need to. The crowd starts murmuring. Someone asks what the hell is happening. Hyuk-soo's face is purple with rage and exertion, and his swings are getting sloppy. He screams at Seo-jun to stop running and fight like a man. Seo-jun sees the timer stutter on a wide, reckless overhead chop. He steps inside Hyuk-soo's guard and plants his palm flat against the bigger boy's chest. He pushes. Hyuk-soo, already off balance, topples backward and crashes onto the stone floor with a sound like a dropped anvil. Seo-jun looks down at him. His voice carries across the silent arena. He says the duel is over. Hyuk-soo tries to scramble up, but his sword is 3 feet away and his arms are shaking from exhaustion. The instructor calls the match. Seo-jun defeated Jang Hyuk-soo without throwing a single strike. The crowd doesn't know whether to cheer or panic. Seo-jun walks out of the pit while Hyuk-soo screams curses at his back. Min Seo is waiting at the top of the bleachers. Her arms are crossed, and there's something sharp and satisfied in her eyes. She tells him that was the most humiliating thing she's ever watched. And she says good. The victory should feel like a win. Instead, Seo-jun feels a cold prickle on the back of his neck. He turns and sees a man standing at the far end of the arena entrance, half hidden in shadow. The man is tall and expensively dressed in dark silks, and his face is a harder, older version of Hyuk-soo's. His timer reads 41 years. Jang Tae-sik, the guildmaster, doesn't approach. He just watches Seo-jun for 3 long seconds, then turns and walks away. Seo-jun knows a threat when he sees one. That evening, Seo-jun reports to the East Library for his second training session. The headmaster is waiting with a stack of texts on Fate Seer combat theory, but Seo-jun can't focus. He tells Baek Hyun-woo about the duel and about Jang Tae-sik watching from the shadows. The headmaster's frown deepens. He says Tae-sik is a dangerous man with a long memory and a lot of guild resources. He runs half the mercenary contracts in the region, and he doesn't tolerate anything that threatens his family's reputation. Humiliating his only son in public qualifies. Seo-jun asks if Tae-sik knows about the Fate Seer. The headmaster says not yet, but he'll start digging now, and a man with his connections can uncover secrets the academy has kept buried for centuries. They train anyway. The headmaster drills Seo-jun on precision, on threading the needle between seconds and minutes without the backlash knocking him unconscious. An hour in, Seo-jun manages to add 6 full minutes to a dying candle's timer without physical contact. The strain leaves him on his knees, gasping. But he did it. The headmaster helps him up and says he's progressing faster than any recorded Fate Seer in history. That should be comforting. It isn't, because when Seo-jun looks at the headmaster, really looks, he sees something that makes his blood stop. Baek Hyun-woo's timer has changed. It no longer reads 30 years. It reads 30 days. Seo-jun's voice comes out hoarse. He asks the headmaster if he knows. The old man follows Seo-jun's gaze to the air above his own head, where he can't see anything. His expression goes very still. He asks what Seo-jun sees. Seo-jun tells him, 30 days. The headmaster sits down heavily in his chair. He doesn't ask if Seo-jun is sure. He doesn't question the accuracy of the ability. He just stares at his own hands for a long, silent moment. Then he says Shadow Hand has already started moving. Seo-jun's fists clench. He asks what they can do. Headmaster looks up, and his eyes are sharp as broken glass again. He says they can fight. He says they can train harder and move faster and uncover the threat before it strikes. But most importantly, he says, Seo-jun needs to understand that some timers cannot be rewritten. The headmaster's death was set in motion by forces outside Seo-jun's control, and burning himself out trying to change it will only get them both killed. Seo-jun doesn't accept that. He can't. He nods and helps the headmaster gather the scrolls and says nothing about the decision already hardening in his chest. He is going to find whoever is targeting the headmaster, and he is going to stop them, even if it costs him everything. The next morning, Seo-jun doesn't go to the East Library. He goes to the Academy's administrative wing instead, where student records and faculty assignments are kept in a dusty basement archive. He tells the clerk he's doing research for a class project. The clerk barely looks up from her tea. Seo-jun spends 3 hours cross-referencing faculty schedules, visitor logs, and supply manifests. Most of it is boring. One detail is not. A new groundskeeper was hired 3 weeks ago, a man named Yu Sang-min. No previous employment history on file, no references, and he started working the day after Seo-jun's profession was announced. Seo-jun finds Yu Sang-min in the garden behind the faculty quarters, trimming hedges with a pair of iron shears. The man is middle-aged and unremarkable, with a face that blends into crowds. His timer reads 1 year, 2 months, and 11 days. Seo-jun watches him from a second-floor window for 20 minutes. The groundskeeper trims hedges and sweeps paths, and does nothing suspicious at all. But twice, he glances toward the headmaster's tower, and twice, his hand goes to something small and dark tucked inside his tunic. Seo-jun doesn't confront him, not yet. He needs proof first, and he needs to know who Yu Sang-min is working for. So he goes to the one person who might be able to help. Choi Min-so is in the combat training yard, drilling sword forms against a wooden dummy. Her bandage is gone now, replaced by a thin pink scar at her temple. She stops mid-swing when she sees Seo-jun's face. She asks what's wrong. He tells her he needs her help with something dangerous. He tells her it involves the headmaster's life and an organization that murders people like him. Min-seo doesn't hesitate. She sets down her practice sword and says she owes him a life debt. She's in. Seo-jun outlines the plan as they walk toward the garden. Simple. Tail the groundskeeper, document his movements, find out who he reports to. Min-seo asks what they do if they catch him in the act. Seo-jun's jaw tightens. He says they stop him. They find Yu Sang-min near the kitchen deliveries, talking to a supply cart driver. The conversation looks casual, 2 workers shooting the breeze. But Seo-jun sees the groundskeeper slip something into the driver's hand, and the driver passes back a small folded note. Min-seo is already moving. He circles around the side of the kitchen and intercepts the supply cart as it rattles toward the main gate. She asks the driver for directions to the East Barracks, smiling and polite and absolutely blocking his path. By the time the driver extricates himself, Min-seo has lifted the note from his coat pocket. She meets Seo-jun behind the stables and unfolds the paper. It's a single line of cramped handwriting. Shadow Hand sends its regard. The headmaster dies at the full moon. The full moon is 3 days away. Seo-jun's hands are steady when he folds the note and tucks it into his tunic. His voice is even steadier. He tells Min-seo they're going to the headmaster right now, and then they're going to set a trap. They don't run to the headmaster. They sprint. Seo-jun's boots slam against the cobblestones, and Min-seo is right beside him, the note burning a hole in his tunic pocket. He doesn't care who sees them now. The headmaster's timer is ticking down to 30 days, and someone just moved the deadline up by 27 of them. They burst through the tower door and up the spiral stairs. The headmaster is at his desk with a cup of cold tea and 3 open scrolls. He doesn't look surprised to see them. Seo-jun slaps the note onto the desk and says nothing. Baek Hyun-woo reads it once, then again. His face doesn't change, but his hands go very still on the parchment. He asks how they got this. Seo-jun tells him everything. Yu Sang-min, the supply cart driver, the note lifted from the man's pocket. The headmaster listens without interrupting. When Seo-jun finishes, the old man exhales slowly and says they've just confirmed something he suspected. Shadow Hand doesn't send notes like this to gloat. They send them to flush out a target. The full moon threat is real, but it's also bait. Anyone who tries to protect the headmaster walks straight into a kill zone. Min-seo asks what the plan is. The headmaster's eyes flick to Seo-jun. He says the plan is to make Shadow Hand believe their threat worked. And he tells them to sit down because he's about to explain something that changes everything. Seo-jun and Min-seo pull up chairs. The headmaster rolls out a map of the academy grounds, marked with small red circles. Each circle is a location where someone died in the last 3 months. 2 kitchen staff, 1 stable hand, a visiting scholar. All deaths ruled natural or accidental. All of them worked in areas with direct access to the headmaster's food, water, and quarters. Shadow Hand has been probing his defenses for weeks, testing which gaps they can slip through. The full moon attack won't come from outside the walls. It's already inside. Someone on the academy staff is the trigger, and the groundskeeper is just a scout. Seo-jun's jaw tightens. He asks who the triggerman is. The headmaster doesn't know yet, but he knows how to find out. He reaches into his desk drawer and pulls out a small glass vial filled with clear liquid. Odorless, tasteless, lethal within 1 hour of ingestion. Shadow's Mercy. It's a poison that leaves no trace in the body, no mark on the skin. The perfect tool for an assassination that needs to look like heart failure. This vial was confiscated from a dead Shadow Hand operative 20 years ago. The headmaster has kept it ever since as a reminder. Now he's going to use it as bait. He tells Seo-jun what he needs him to do. It's simple. And it's terrifying, and Seo-jun doesn't hesitate for a second. The next morning, Seo-jun is in the dining hall before sunrise. The kitchen staff are prepping breakfast, hauling sacks of flour and cracking eggs into iron bowls. He sits in the corner with a book open, pretending to read. His eyes track every person who enters the room. He sees timers on all of them. The head cook has 31 years. The scullery girl has 64. The thin man slicing vegetables near the window has 6 months and 2 days. None of them are the threat, but Seo-jun is patient. He watches the kitchen runners carry trays toward the faculty wing. One of those trays holds the headmaster's morning meal, and somewhere between the kitchen and the headmaster's desk, that meal is going to be poisoned. The headmaster's plan is horrifyingly simple. Let the attempt happen. Let the trigger man expose himself, and then let Seo-jun do what only he can do. Seo-jun rises from his chair and follows the breakfast tray at a distance. He keeps 50 meters exactly, close enough to read timers, far enough to stay invisible. Runner is a young servant boy with a timer of 72 years. Not him. The tray passes through the east corridor. A maid crosses paths with the runner and pauses to adjust the napkin. Her timer reads 12 years. Nothing changes. Seo-jun keeps following. The tray reaches the faculty wing and enters a small prep room where final touches are added before delivery. This is where it happens. Seo-jun watches from a doorway as a man in servant's gray steps forward to inspect the tray. The man's name is Do Jin-soo, and Seo-jun has seen him polishing silver in the faculty lounge a dozen times. His timer reads 58 years, and then it doesn't. Seo-jun blinks. The number above Do Jin-soo's head flickers. 58 years becomes 1 hour. Then 59 minutes. Then 58 minutes. It is counting down in real time. Seo-jun's blood runs cold. The triggerman isn't the poisoner. He's the delivery system. Do Jin-soo lifts the teapot from the tray and pours a cup of steaming jasmine tea. He does it smoothly, professionally, and then he drinks it. Seo-jun almost shouts. He stops himself because he understands what he's seeing now. Do Jin-soo is a suicide asset. Shadow Hand didn't send a killer to poison the headmaster's tea. They sent a man who carries the poison in his own body, waiting for the right moment to activate it. And once it's active, he has 1 hour to get close to the target. The tea he just poured is clean. Do Jin-soo himself is the weapon. Seo-jun watches the man straighten his tunic and pick up the tray. His timer now reads 52 minutes. He is walking toward the headmaster's tower. Seo-jun moves. He takes the back stairs 3 at a time and bursts into the headmaster's office through the service entrance. Baek Hyun-woo looks up from his scrolls. Seo-jun's voice is a ragged whisper. He tells him it's a suicide runner. The headmaster's face goes pale. He asks if Seo-jun is certain. Seo-jun points at the air above Do Jin-soo's head, invisible to anyone but him, and says the man has 48 minutes to live. The headmaster asks what happens when the timer hits 0. Seo-jun doesn't know, but he knows it's bad enough to kill everyone in the room. Headmaster stands up and says they need to evacuate the tower. Min-seo is already at the door. She says there's no time. Do Jin-soo is climbing the stairs right now. They can hear his footsteps in the corridor. 3 people trapped in a tower with a walking bomb, and Seo-jun is the only one who can see the fuse. He doesn't think, he acts. Seo-jun steps into the corridor and walks straight toward Do Jin-soo. Servant stops, startled by the sudden appearance of a student. Seo-jun doesn't slow down. He reaches out and grabs the man's wrist. The contact is like grabbing a live wire. Seo-jun feels the death coiled inside Do Jin-soo's body, black and hungry and reaching for release. The timer above his head reads 41 minutes. Seo-jun focuses. The pain hits him immediately. It's worse than the troll dungeon, worse than Min-seo's rewrite. This death isn't a distant possibility. It's already unspooling inside the man's bloodstream, and Seo-jun is trying to reverse a chemical reaction with sheer will. Ice spreads through his arm and into his chest. His vision goes white at the edges, but he doesn't let go. He pushes everything he has into the rewrite. 41 minutes, 41 days, 41 years. The number above Do Jin-soo's head shudders and goes dark. Then it relights. 60 years. Do Jin-soo blinks, confused by the student gripping his arm. He asks if the young master is feeling unwell. Seo-jun releases him and takes a step back. His legs barely hold him. He tells Do Jin-soo to go to the infirmary because he looks feverish. The servant nods, suddenly aware of a headache blooming behind his eyes. He sets down the tray and stumbles toward the stairs. Seo-jun waits until the footsteps fade before he collapses against the wall. Min-seo catches him before he hits the floor. She asks if he just did what she thinks he did. Seo-jun's voice is barely a whisper. He says the poison was already inside the man. Someone activated it remotely, probably with a trigger phrase or a magical signal. Do Jin-soo didn't even know he was a weapon. The headmaster kneels beside Seo-jun and checks his pulse. His face is grim. He says Shadow Hand has never used suicide assets before. This is an escalation. They're not just trying to kill the headmaster, they're testing how far they can push. And if they're willing to burn a sleeper agent on a morning tea delivery, it means the real attack is already in motion. Seo-jun forces himself upright. He says they need to find out who activated Do-jin-soo. The headmaster nods. He tells Min-seo to get Seo-jun to the infirmary. Then he reaches for his coat, and his voice turns to iron. He says he's going to have a conversation with the groundskeeper. Min-seo protests. She says he can't walk into a trap alone. The headmaster smiles, and it's not a nice smile. He says he's counting on it. Seo-jun doesn't go to the infirmary. He waits until the headmaster is out of sight. Then he pushes away from Min-seo's grip. She tells him he's insane. He tells her he can still see timers. And right now, the headmaster's timer has stopped flickering. It's holding steady at 29 days. Whatever Shadow Hand had planned for this morning, Seo-jun just broke it. But the clock is still running. And if the groundskeeper is the scout, then someone gave him his orders. Someone inside the academy. Seo-jun tells Min-seo they need to search the faculty quarters. Specifically, they need to find out who was near the servants' hall this morning. Min-seo doesn't argue. They move through the corridors like shadows. Seo-jun's body is screaming at him, but he ignores it. He's getting better at that. They reach the faculty wing and split up. Min-seo takes the east hall. Seo-jun takes the west. He checks every door, every nameplate, every window. Most of the instructors are at breakfast or in their lecture halls. The corridors are empty. One door is slightly ajar. Professor Kwan's office. Seo-jun hesitates. Professor Kwan is a senior combat instructor, a man with 30 years of experience and a reputation for being hard but fair. He's never been on Seo-jun's radar at all, which is exactly what makes him perfect. Seo-jun slips inside. The office is neat and orderly, with a polished desk and shelves full of combat manuals. Nothing looks suspicious, but Seo-jun isn't looking with his eyes. He focuses and lets the timers appear. Every object in the room has a faint residual glow, traces of the people who touched it. And on the desk, tucked under a stack of graded assignments, is a slip of paper. The timer residue on it is wrong. It glows with the same dark, hungry energy he felt in Do-jin-soo's body. Seo-jun pulls the paper free and reads it. It's a list of names. Do-jin-soo is at the top. Below him are 3 other servants, and below them is a single line that makes Seo-jun's heart stop. Activation window, 3 days. Full asset deployment, full moon. The door swings open behind him. Professor Kwan is standing in the doorway. His timer reads 22 years, and then it doesn't. It flickers, just like Do-jin-soo's did. 22 years becomes 40 minutes. Professor Kwan's face is calm. He asks if Seo-jun found what he was looking for. Seo-jun doesn't answer. He's watching the professor's timer count down. 39 minutes. 38. Kwan steps into the room and closes the door behind him. He says he was hoping the headmaster would find the note first. It would have been cleaner that way, but since Seo-jun is here, plans have changed. Reaches into his coat. Seo-jun doesn't wait to see what comes out. He lunges. Not at Kwan. At the window. Seo-jun crashes through the glass and rolls onto the stone walkway outside. Pain shoots through his shoulder, but he's already running. Behind him, Professor Kwan's voice carries through the broken window. He says Seo-jun can't outrun what's already inside. Seo-jun doesn't look back. He runs straight for the headmaster's tower. Min-seo intercepts him in the main courtyard. She sees the blood on his shoulder and the look on his face and asks no questions. She just falls into step beside him. Seo-jun tells her it's Professor Kwan, and Kwan is activated. Same as Do-jin-soo. 40 minutes until he dies, and he's not planning to die alone. They find the headmaster in the garden behind the faculty quarters. Yu Sang-min, the groundskeeper, is on his knees with his hands bound. The headmaster's face is stone. He says the groundskeeper talked faster than he expected. Shadow Hand has 3 more sleepers inside the academy, all activated this morning. Seo-jun hands in the list from Kwan's office. He says one of them is the professor who taught him combat fundamentals. The headmaster reads the names. His expression doesn't change, but something behind his eyes goes very dark. He says, Shadow Hand is burning their entire network for this strike. They're not sending a message, they're sending a funeral. Min-seo asks what they do. Seo-jun answers before the headmaster can. He says they find the other 3 before their timers hit 0, and then he rewrites every single one. The headmaster looks at Seo-jun, really looks. He sees the blood on the boy's shoulder, and the tremor in his hands, and the steel in his voice. He asks if Seo-jun can handle that many rewrites in one day. Seo-jun doesn't know. He's never tried, but he knows what happens if he doesn't. So he squares his shoulders and tells the headmaster to point him at the next target. The headmaster studies him for a long moment. Then he nods. He says the other 3 sleepers are in the kitchen, the laundry, and the east guard post. They have roughly 30 minutes before the first one detonates. Min-seo is already moving. She says she'll take the guard post. The headmaster will handle the laundry, and Seo-jun gets the kitchen. Because the kitchen is the most crowded, he can't afford to fight. He has to walk in, touch the sleeper, and rewrite their timer before anyone even knows something is wrong. No pressure. Seo-jun reaches the kitchen just as the morning meal rush peaks. Servants and students crowd the long wooden tables. The noise is deafening. He scans the room, ignoring the dozens of timers floating above innocent heads. There, kitchen boy named Han Ha-jun, 16 years old, scrubbing pots near the back sink. His timer reads 14 minutes. Seo-jun moves through the crowd like a ghost. Nobody notices the support class student weaving between tables. Han Ha-jun doesn't look up from his scrubbing. His face is blank, his movements mechanical. He doesn't know he's about to die. Seo-jun reaches him and crouches down. He asks if the boy has a moment to help him find something in the pantry. Han Ha-jun blinks. His eyes are glassy, unfocused. He says he's very busy. Seo-jun puts his hand on the boy's shoulder. He says it'll only take a second. The rewrite hits like a lightning strike. Seo-jun's vision goes white and then red and then black. He feels the poison inside Han Ha-jun, different from Do-jin-soo's, but just as lethal. Shadow Hand tailored each trigger to the sleeper. This one is slower, designed to build pressure until the body ruptures. Seo-jun forces the timer upward. 14 minutes becomes 14 years, 40 years, 60. The kitchen boy gasps and drops his scrub brush. He looks at Seo-jun with clear eyes for the first time. He asks what just happened. Seo-jun pats his shoulder and tells him to take the rest of the day off. Then he stands up and walks out of the kitchen before his legs give out. 2 down, 2 to go. Min-seo meets him in the courtyard. She's limping, and there's a fresh bruise on her jaw. She says the guard post sleeper fought back, but she got it done. Seo-jun doesn't tell her how much the rewrites are costing him. He doesn't need to. She can see it in his face. She asks if he can do one more. He says he can do as many as it takes. The headmaster is waiting for them at the laundry. The third sleeper is an older woman named An So-jun, who has worked at the academy for 15 years. Her timer reads 7 minutes. Seo-jun doesn't hesitate. He touches her wrist and pushes. The pain is less this time. Or maybe he's just going numb. Either way, the timer resets. An So-jun blinks and asks why everyone is standing around her. The headmaster tells her she fainted, nothing to worry about. She shrugs and goes back to folding linens. 3 sleepers neutralized. 1 left, Professor Kwon. And his timer has less than 20 minutes now. The headmaster leads them back to the faculty wing. He says Kwon will be waiting for them. He's a combat instructor with decades of experience, and he knows every trap they might set. Seo-jun asks if the headmaster has a plan. The headmaster says he has something better than a plan. He has leverage. When they reach Professor Kwon's office, the door is still ajar. Kwon is sitting behind his desk with his hands folded. His timer reads 18 minutes. He smiles when they enter and says he was wondering how long they would take. The headmaster steps forward. He says he knows Kwon is a dead man. He says he knows Shadow Hand activated him this morning, and he knows the poison is already unraveling his organs. But here's what Kwon doesn't know. The headmaster pulls a small glass vial from his coat. Shadow's Mercy. The same poison that's killing Kwon right now. The headmaster says he's had the antidote for 20 years. He never had a reason to use it. Until today. Kwon's smile flickers. He says the headmaster is bluffing. The headmaster uncorks the vial and sets it on the desk between them. He says there's 1 dose, 1 chance. All Kwon has to do is tell them who gave the activation order. Kwon stares at the vial. His timer reads 14 minutes. He's sweating now. He says if he talks, Shadow Hand will kill his family. The headmaster's voice is quiet as a blade. He says Shadow Hand is going to kill his family anyway. That's what they do. They burn assets and everyone connected to them. But if Kwon talks, the headmaster can protect his wife and daughter. Witness protection, new identities, a life far from here. Kwon's hands are shaking. His timer reads 10 minutes. Seo-jun watches the numbers tick down and feels the weight of every second. 9 minutes. Kwon lunges for the vial. He drinks it in one desperate swallow, and then he starts talking. The activation order came from outside the academy. A man named Jang Tae-sik. He's a guild leader with connections to half the noble houses in the kingdom, and he wants the headmaster dead because the headmaster is protecting something Jang Tae-sik needs. The last Fate Seer's research. 500 years of knowledge about death manipulation, sealed in a vault beneath the academy. Jang Tae-sik doesn't want to kill the headmaster. He wants the vault. And the full moon isn't just an assassination date. It's the deadline for an ultimatum. Open the vault or watch everyone in the academy die. The headmaster's face is unreadable. He asks where Jang Tae-sik is now. Kwon's timer stabilizes at 8 minutes. The antidote is working. He gives them an address in the merchant district. a warehouse owned by one of Jang Tae-sik's shell companies. Seo-jun memorizes it. Then he steps forward and touches Kwan's wrist. The rewrite is the hardest one yet. Not because the poison is stronger, but because Kwan is fighting it. His body has accepted death. Seo-jun has to convince every cell, every failing organ, that there's a future. He pushes until blood drips from his nose, until his knees hit the floor, and then the timer jumps. 8 minutes becomes 60 years. Kwan gasps, clutching his chest. He looks at Seo-jun with something that might be terror or might be awe. He asks what Seo-jun is. Seo-jun wipes the blood from his lip and stands. He says he's the reason Jang Tae-sik is going to fail. Then he turns to the headmaster. He says they have 3 days until the full moon. 3 days to find Jang Tae-sik and stop whatever he's planning. The headmaster nods slowly. He says they also have 4 sleepers who are now awake and very confused. Seo-jun asks what happens to them. The headmaster says they get a choice: testify against Jang Tae-sik and enter protective custody, or face the Academy's justice. Kwan makes his choice immediately. He says he'll testify. He says he'll give them everything. Do Jin-soo, Han Ha-jun, and An So-yeon follow within the hour. All 4 sleepers, alive and talking. Shadow Hand's entire network inside the Academy, dismantled in a single morning. But Seo-jun doesn't feel like celebrating. He sits on the steps of the headmaster's tower and stares at his own hands. Min-seo sits beside him. She asks if he's okay. He says he just rewrote 4 death sentences today. 4 people who were supposed to die are still breathing. And every time he does it, it hurts a little less. He doesn't know if that's a good thing. Min-seo doesn't have an answer for that, so she just sits with him while the sun climbs higher and the Academy buzzes with rumors no one can confirm. The headmaster finds them an hour later. He says Jang Tae-sik's warehouse is empty. They expected that, but they found documents linking him to a larger network. Shadow Hand isn't just a few rogue nobles. It's an organization with cells in every major city, and Jang Tae-sik is only the middle management. The person giving him orders is someone much higher up. Seo-jun asks who. The headmaster's face is grim. He says the documents mention a name: Hwang Jae-won, a nobleman with political immunity and a seat on the royal council. Taking him down means going through the entire kingdom's power structure. Seo-jun stands up. His legs are steady now. He says that's fine. He says he didn't become a Fate Seer to take down easy targets. He looks at the headmaster, at Min-seo, at the tower that holds 500 years of secrets, and he says the full moon is in 3 days. Jang Tae-sik is expecting a headmaster. Dawn breaks cold and gray over the East Library Tower. Headmaster is already waiting inside when Seo-jun arrives. Not with books. With a training dummy carved from solid oak and wrapped in iron bands. The headmaster says reading theory won't save anyone in a dungeon. He says Seo-jun needs to learn how to read timers while moving, while dodging, while someone is trying to kill him. Our boy doesn't even get a chance to answer. The headmaster swings a wooden staff at his ribs. Seo-jun flinches, and the blow connects. He hits the floor hard enough to taste dust. The headmaster says that's lesson 1. Pain makes you forget to look. A dead Fate Seer is a useless Fate Seer. Seo-jun pushes himself up and spits grit onto the stone. He says he wasn't ready. The headmaster says enemies don't wait for you to be ready. The staff comes down again. This time, Seo-jun scrambles backward. His eyes snap to the white numbers above the headmaster's head. 30 years, same as before. But now a smaller number flickers beneath it. 30 seconds, 29, 28. The headmaster swings, Seo-jun ducks. The staff whistles past his ear. 20 seconds. The headmaster reverses his grip and thrusts. Seo-jun sidesteps by a thumb's width. 10 seconds. He realizes the subtimer is counting down to a specific event. 5 seconds. On 1, the headmaster feints high and sweeps low. Seo-jun jumps. The staff misses completely. The headmaster stops moving. He's smiling. He says that's lesson 2. Every danger has a pre-echo. If Seo-jun can read the countdown to the next attack, he doesn't need speed. He just needs to be somewhere else when the blow lands. Seo-jun stands there breathing hard. His ribs ache, and his palms are scraped raw. But he's grinning because for the first time, his power feels like a weapon. Training continues for 3 hours. The headmaster escalates, brings in 2 assistants, then 3. Wooden swords and blunt arrows fly at Seo-jun from multiple directions. Each one carries its own tiny timer. Seo-jun learns to read them all at once. A flickering constellation of death moments hanging in the air around him. He twists between an arrow and a sword thrust. He drops under a staff swing aimed at his skull. He vaults over a low sweep and lands in a crouch. The headmaster watches from the edge of the training circle. His expression is unreadable. But he doesn't tell Seo-jun to stop. Min-seo limps into the library around noon. Her leg is still bandaged from the troll attack. She watches Seo-jun dodge 3 attacks in the span of a single breath. Her eyes go wide. She asks the headmaster how long Seo-jun has been training like this. The headmaster says 4 hours. Min Seo says that's impossible. No first-year moves like that after 4 hours. The headmaster says Fate Seers don't learn like other professions. They learn by surviving. And Seo-jun has already survived more than most students face in a year. Seo-jun doesn't hear any of this. He's too focused on the timers. His world has narrowed to white numbers and the spaces between them. A training sword swings at his throat with a 5-second countdown. He steps inside the arc, grabs the assistant's wrist, and rewrites. Not the assistant's lifespan. He's not stupid enough to burn himself on a training dummy. He rewrites the sword's trajectory instead, pushing his will into the numbers until the timer stutters. The assistant stumbles. The sword misses. The headmaster stands up very straight. He says he didn't teach Seo-jun that. Seo-jun says he figured it out on his own. The headmaster is quiet for a long moment. Then he says training is over for today. That night, Seo-jun sits alone on the roof of his dormitory. The moon is 1 night closer to full. He stares at his own hands, pale in the darkness, trembling slightly from exhaustion. And then he sees it floating above his own chest, reflected in the window glass. A timer. 120 years. White and steady and real. He's never looked at his own before. He didn't know he could. 120 years of life stretching out ahead of him, assuming nobody kills him first. Assuming Shadow Hand doesn't succeed. Assuming he doesn't burn himself out, rewriting death after death. But still, it's there, a number he can hold on to. He closes his eyes and lets the timer's glow settle into his bones. When he opens them again, the fear is smaller. The next morning, the academy alarm shatters the quiet. Not a bell. A roar, low and bass, and shaking the ground hard enough to crack flagstones. Seo-jun bolts upright on the roof, with his heart slamming against his ribs. He looks toward the main gate. What he sees doesn't make sense at first. A crack in the sky, glowing violet and jagged, like lightning frozen in glass. And from that crack, shapes are falling. Hundreds of them, winged and clawed and screaming as they plummet toward the academy walls. Dungeon break. Not a small one like Verdant Hollow. This is a full rupture, monsters pouring into the world like a wound that won't close. Students flood into the courtyard in panicked clusters. Some are still in sleepwear. Some are carrying weapons. Most are frozen, staring at the sky. Seo-jun vaults over the roof edge and drops 2 stories. He lands hard, rolls, comes up running. Min Seo intercepts him near the fountain. She's got her sword drawn and her jaw set. She says the faculty are forming a defensive line at the main gate. She says the first wave hit 2 minutes ago. Casualties already. Seo-jun looks at the courtyard full of students. Hundreds of timers, glowing white above hundreds of heads, and a dozen of them are reading less than 5 minutes. He doesn't think, he moves. He grabs the nearest student, a second-year girl clutching a broken spear, and pushes her toward the east wing. He says the east wing basement has reinforced walls. He tells her to get everyone she can find and go there now. She stares at him. Her timer reads 4 minutes and 37 seconds. She asks who he is. Seo-jun says he's the guy who's going to make sure she lives long enough to thank him. He turns to Min Seo and gives her a list of names. Students whose timers are lowest. Min Seo doesn't ask how he knows. She just runs. Together they pull 14 people out of the courtyard. A fire mage whose timer reads 2 minutes drags a younger student toward the east wing. Seo-jun sees the numbers stabilize. The immediate danger shifts. The death moment moves farther out. He's buying them time by changing their positions, by putting them in places where the monsters won't reach. It's not rewriting, it's redirection, and it's working until the inner wall collapses. Stone explodes inward. A creature the size of a siege tower steps through the dust. 6 legs, 4 arms, a face like a broken cathedral. It opens its mouth and a sound comes out that isn't a roar. It's a laugh. Mocking and wet and deeply wrong. The demon leader. Seo-jun looks at its timer. The number doesn't stay still. It flickers, jumps upward by seconds, then minutes, then hours. He watches it absorb a wounded first year's death timer right through the air. A white thread of light pulling from the boy's chest into the demon's maw. The demon's timer ticks upward. The boy's timer hits 0. He drops. Seo-jun screams. Not in grief, in fury. He charges the demon with nothing but his fists and the numbers burning in his vision. The demon swats at him like a gnat. Seo-jun reads the timer of the strike. 3 seconds. He dives under the claw. 2 seconds. He slides between the demon's legs. 1 second. He plants a hand on its carapace, and he rewrites. The demon's timer is a tangled knot of stolen lives. Souls it's consumed over days or weeks or years. Seo-jun doesn't untangle them. He cuts through them. He pushes the number down, down, down past the minutes, past the seconds, toward 0. The demon shrieks. It convulses. Every stolen soul inside it screams at once. And then the timer hits 0. The demon freezes mid-motion. Its carapace cracks. Black light bleeds out from the fissures, and the demon leader dissolves into ash that scatters on the wind. Seo-jun collapses before the ash hits the ground. His limbs don't work. His vision is a smear of gray and white. He can't feel his fingers. He can't feel anything. The last thing he sees before the darkness takes him is Min Seo's face. Her mouth is moving. He can't hear the words, but her timer still reads 60 years, and that's enough. He lets go. The darkness that takes him isn't peaceful. It's full of shapes, fragments of the demon's stolen memories leaking into his sleeping mind. He sees a village burning, a child's hands reaching up through water, a sword breaking on black stone. None of it belongs to him. All of it hurts. And beneath the pain, something else moves, quiet and patient and deeply pleased. The demon wasn't the one who opened the rift. It was a decoy. While Seo-jun fought, someone else was working. Jang Tae-sik moves through the chaos like a ghost. He wears a faculty robe stolen from a dead instructor. No one looks twice at him. Everyone is too busy bleeding. He plants 3 pieces of evidence in the rubble near where Seo-jun fell. A shadow hand insignia, a letter addressed to Seo-jun, written in careful imitation of his handwriting, and a small black stone that pulses with the same violet energy as the rift. The stone is a dungeon key, a forbidden artifact that can force open a gate anywhere. Possessing one is a capital crime. Jang Tae-sik drops it next to Seo-jun's unconscious hand. Then he vanishes into the smoke. Seo-jun wakes in a cell. Stone walls, iron bars, a single torch guttering in a bracket. His wrists are chained. His head is pounding. And above his own hand, floating in the dim light, his timer reads 3 days. The cell stinks of damp stone and old blood. Our boy Kang Seo-jun opens his eyes to iron bars and a single torch sputtering in its bracket. His wrists are shackled to the wall. His head pounds like someone drove a spike through his skull. Above his own hand, floating in the dim orange light, is a glowing white number. 3 days. 72 hours before something kills him. He does not panic, he counts. 1 breath, 2 breaths. His body feels like a sack of broken glass, but his mind is already running the angles. The chains are standard academy restraints. The cell is a holding chamber in the disciplinary wing. He knows the layout from the student handbook, but knowing the layout won't help if he can't move his arms. He tests the chains anyway. They don't budge. Door at the end of the corridor creaks open, and torchlight spills across the stone floor. 2 guards enter first. Behind them walks a man in a black magistrate's robe with silver threading at the collar. He carries a ledger and wears the expression of someone who has already decided you're guilty. The magistrate stops in front of Seo-jun's cell and peers through the bars like he's examining a dead rat. He says the prisoner is awake. He says good. The interrogation can begin immediately. Seo-jun asks what charges he's facing. The magistrate flips open his ledger and reads aloud without looking up. Possession of a forbidden dungeon key. Conspiracy with the Shadow Hand organization. Deliberate sabotage resulting in the deaths of 17 students and 3 faculty members. 17 dead. The number hits Seo-jun harder than the demon's claw did. He thinks of the students he pulled from the courtyard. He thinks of the timers that stabilized. He thinks of the ones he couldn't reach. The magistrate closes the ledger and asks if the prisoner has anything to say. Seo-jun's voice comes out hoarse and cracked. He says he didn't open the rift. He says he killed the demon leader. He destroyed it with his own hands. He says someone planted the evidence while he was unconscious. The magistrate doesn't blink. He says the dark stone was found in the prisoner's right hand, still pulsing with rift energy. He says a letter addressed to the prisoner detailed the exact timing of the attack. He says the shadow hand insignia matches the one sewn into the prisoner's belongings. Seo-jun's blood goes cold. Jang Tae-sik did this. It has to be him. The evidence is too perfect and too neatly arranged. The magistrate says the trial will be held in 3 days. He says given the severity of the crimes, the sentence is execution. He turns and walks out without waiting for a response. The guards follow. The torchlight retreats. Our boy is alone again with his timer and the dark. He doesn't sleep that night. He stares at the number floating above his hand and replays every moment of the battle. Demon's stolen memories are still rattling around in his skull. The burning village. The child's hands reaching through water. None of it is his. All of it hurts. And behind it all, that quiet presence still moves, patient and deeply pleased. Seo-jun doesn't know what it is, but he knows one thing for certain. It wanted him alive. The next morning brings a visitor. Choi Min-so walks down the corridor with a bandage wrapped around her shoulder and fire in her eyes. Her sword arm is in a sling, but she's still wearing her academy uniform like armor. The guard tries to tell her visitation isn't permitted. She tells him to move or she'll make him move. The guard moves. She stops in front of the cell and looks at Seo-jun through the bars. Her timer still reads 60 years. Seo-jun almost laughs when he sees it. 60 years. The one thing he did right. Min-so says he looks like garbage. He says he feels worse than he looks. She grips the bars with her good hand, and her knuckles go white. She says she doesn't believe the charges. She says she watched him kill a demon that was consuming souls like candy. She says no one who fights like that is a traitor. Seo-jun asks if anyone else believes him. Min-seo's silence is the only answer he needs. She says the student body is scared. She says 17 deaths will make people desperate for someone to blame. She says Jang Hyuk-soo has been telling everyone who will listen that Seo-jun was always suspicious. His so-called legendary profession was just a cover for sabotage. Seo-jun asks about the headmaster. Min-seo's expression shifts. She says the headmaster hasn't been seen since the attack. She says he vanished right after Seo-jun collapsed. Our boy's stomach drops. The headmaster's timer was supposed to read 30 years. He rewrote the servant's death to prevent the poisoning. But if Jang Tae-sik got to him anyway, he can't finish the thought. Min-seo sees the look on his face and says she'll find out what happened. She says she'll talk to every instructor and every guard and every kitchen worker if she has to. She asks what she should look for. Seo-jun thinks fast. The evidence against him was planted while he was unconscious. That means someone was in the rubble with his body before the medics arrived. He tells Min-seo to find out who arrived first at the scene. He tells her to check the duty roster for the East Courtyard. He tells her to look for anyone who wasn't supposed to be there. Min-seo nods. She says she'll be back in a day. She turns to leave and then stops. Without looking back, she says she owes him her life. She says she's not going to let him die in a cell for a crime he didn't commit, and then she's gone. The torchlight flickers, and Seo-jun is alone again. But the cell doesn't feel quite as small as it did before. Half a day passes. Seo-jun counts the hours by the way the torch burns lower. He's running through every name and face he can remember from the courtyard. Someone knew where he fell. Someone moved fast, while everyone else was fighting for their lives. Jang Tae-sik has resources, but he doesn't have invisibility. There has to be a witness. The dungeon key is the smoking gun. Seo-jun knows the academy tracks every forbidden artifact that enters its walls. The key was planted. There's a record somewhere of where it came from. The shadow hand insignia is the weakest link. It's too specific, too theatrical. A real operative wouldn't carry their organization's symbol into a sabotage mission. That's evidence Jang Tae-sik fabricated, and fabrications leave seams. The door at the end of the corridor opens again. This time, the guards bring someone Seo-jun doesn't recognize. An old man in a gray attendant's uniform shuffles forward carrying a tray of bread and water. His timer reads 41 years. He sets the tray down outside the cell and slides it through the slot in the bars. His hands are shaking. He doesn't look at Seo-jun. He whispers without moving his lips. He says the headmaster sent him. Seo-jun's heart slams against his ribs. He keeps his voice low and asks where the headmaster is. The attendant says the headmaster is in hiding. He says the faculty council has declared him compromised. He says they're claiming he conspired with Seo-jun to open the rift. Our boy's jaw tightens. They're cleaning house. Everyone who supported him is being silenced or discredited. The attendant says the headmaster found something. He slides a folded scrap of paper beneath the bread crust. He says to read it after he leaves. Then he stands and shuffles back down the corridor without another word. Seo-jun waits until the door closes. He unfolds the paper with his chained hands. Headmaster Beck's handwriting is cramped and hurried. 3 lines. The key was forged by a mage named Won Dae-hyun, a known associate of Jang Tae-sik. The mage is hiding in the Undercity, 7th Ward, beneath the old aqueduct. The headmaster is tracking him now. Seo-jun reads it twice, and then shoves the paper into his mouth and swallows it. The bread tastes like ash, but he eats that too. He needs his strength, because this changes everything. If the mage who forged the dungeon key is still alive, then there's a witness who can clear his name. He just has to stay alive long enough for the headmaster to bring him in. 3 days. His timer hasn't changed, but now he has a reason to fight. 36 hours later, the cell door opens, and 2 guards drag Seo-jun into the corridor. His legs barely work. His wrists are raw from the shackles, but he walks upright. He will not let them see him stumble. They take him to a windowless chamber with a single chair bolted to the floor and a lantern hanging from the ceiling. A man sits across from him in the shadows. Jang Tae-sik. His timer reads 57 years of comfortable, well-fed life. He smiles like a fox who's already got the chicken in its jaws. He says he wanted to see the boy who's caused him so much trouble. He says it's almost disappointing. He expected someone taller. Seo-jun says nothing. Jang Tae-sik leans forward into the light. He says the trial is tomorrow. He says the verdict is already decided. He says the execution will be public. He says Seo-jun will die a traitor and no one will remember his name. Then he stands and walks to the door. He pauses with his hand on the frame. He says the headmaster is an old man chasing ghosts. He says the Undercity swallows everyone who goes looking for things they shouldn't find. He says it's a shame about the mage. He says accidents happen in the 7th ward all the time, and then he's gone. Seo-jun is left alone with the lantern and the dark and the sound of his own pulse hammering in his ears. Jang Tae-sik knows about the mage. He knows the headmaster is looking for him, which means the headmaster is walking into a trap. The guards come back and drag Seo-jun to his cell. He doesn't resist. He doesn't have the strength, but his mind is already somewhere else. He's thinking about the headmaster's note. He's thinking about the Undercity and the 7th ward and the old aqueduct. He's thinking about timers and death and the precise shape of the trap Jang Tae-sik has laid. But mostly he's thinking about one thing. Jang Tae-sik just told him where the ambush is going to happen. The bastard is so confident in his victory that he gave away the location. Big mistake. The next morning the trial begins. The Great Hall of Shai Academy has been converted into a courtroom. Benches packed with students and faculty and city officials. The magistrate's bench is elevated on a dais where the selection circle used to glow. Above it hangs the Academy banner, a silver tower on a field of blue. Seo-jun is led to the defendant's platform in chains. His uniform is torn. His hair is matted. He looks like a corpse that forgot to stop breathing, but his eyes are clear. He scans the crowd and finds Min Seo in the 3rd row. She's paler than yesterday. Her bandage has a fresh spot of red. She mouths something to him. He can't make out the words, but he knows the shape of them. She found something. The magistrate pounds his gavel and calls the court to order. He reads the charges again. Possession of a forbidden dungeon key. Conspiracy with the Shadow Hand. 17 counts of murder by magical sabotage. The prosecutor stands, a thin man with a voice like a blade being sharpened. He calls the first witness, a faculty member who testifies that Seo-jun was acting strangely before the dungeon break. Seo-jun watches the man's timer. 22 years. No change. The man is lying, but the lie doesn't threaten his life. He calls the second witness, a student who says she saw Seo-jun standing near the east wall before the rift opened. Seo-jun watches her timer. 48 years. Also lying. Also safe. The prosecution presents the physical evidence. The dark stone is brought out on a velvet cushion by a clerk wearing gloves. Pulses in the lantern light, violet and hungry. The magistrate asks Seo-jun if the stone was in his possession. Seo-jun says he was unconscious. He says he doesn't know how the stone got there. He says someone planted it. The prosecutor asks if he has any proof. Seo-jun looks at Min Seo. She nods. And then she stands up in the middle of the gallery, and she says she does. The magistrate calls for order, but Min Seo is already walking toward the front. She says the witness who can clear Seo-jun's name is outside these walls. She says he's been hunted through the Undercity for the past 2 days. She says his name is Won Dae-hyun, and he's the mage who forged the dungeon key. The courtroom erupts. The magistrate pounds his gavel so hard the wood cracks. He demands to know where this witness is, and then the doors at the back of the Great Hall swing open. Headmaster Baek Hyun-woo walks in with a man in chains. His robes are torn and there's blood on his collar, but he's standing. The man in chains has a split lip and a black eye, and a timer that reads 7 hours. The mage. Seo-jun exhales something that's almost a laugh. Headmaster didn't walk into the trap. He walked through it. The magistrate demands to know who this prisoner is. The headmaster says this is Won Dae-hyun, a rogue mage under contract with Jang Tae-sik. He says the mage has already confessed to forging the dungeon key on Jang Tae-sik's orders. He says the Shadow Hand insignia was purchased from a black market dealer in the lower wards. He says the letter was written by Jang Hyuk-soo under his father's direction. The mage nods miserably at each statement. His timer flickers, the death moment shifting as his confession reshapes his future. The prosecutor's face goes gray. The magistrate orders the mage to testify under oath, and Won Dae-hyun talks. He talks for an hour. He names names. He describes payments and meetings, and the night Jang Tae-sik handed him the rift energy sample to replicate. He describes how Jang Hyuk-soo planted the evidence while the medics were distracted with the wounded. He describes everything. When he's finished, the courtroom is silent. The magistrate turns to the prosecutor and asks if he has any further questions. The prosecutor shakes his head. He knows a dead case when he sees one. The magistrate pounds his gavel and declares Kang Seo-jun acquitted of all charges. The chains come off. Seo-jun stands in the middle of the Great Hall with his wrists bleeding and his legs shaking, and his timer still reading 3 days. But the number doesn't drop. It holds steady, and then, slowly, the white glow begins to brighten. The timer climbs. 4 days, 5 days, a week, month, a year, 10 years, 40, 80, 120. Seo-jun watches his own lifespan restore itself, and he feels something crack open in his chest. Not his ribs, not his heart. Something deeper, something that's been closed since the moment he woke up in that cell. The headmaster puts a hand on his shoulder and says they need to move. He says Jang Tae-sik has already fled the city. He says there's a carriage waiting at the east gate. He says they have work to do. Seo-jun looks at Min Seo. She's standing a few feet away with her arm in its sling and her 60-year timer glowing steady above her head. He says she's coming too. She says someone has to make sure he doesn't almost die again. Seo-jun doesn't argue. He walks out of the Great Hall on his own 2 feet. The sun is setting over Shai Academy, and the light is the color of hammered gold. At the east gate, a carriage waits with 2 horses and a driver whose timer reads 44 years. The headmaster climbs in first. Min Seo follows. Seo-jun pauses at the gate and looks back at the academy. The white stone is scorched. The east wall is rubble. 17 bodies are being prepared for burial in the chapel, but the academy is still standing, and so is he. He climbs into the carriage, and the driver cracks the reins. The wheels turn. The city of Eos recedes behind them as the road stretches east toward the mountains. Seo-jun asks where they're going. The headmaster says they're going to find Jang Tae-sik before he can regroup. He says the guildmaster has allies across 3 provinces. He says the Shadow Hand is bigger than any of them realized. He says the real war is just beginning. Seo-jun looks at his timer, and for the first time since he woke up in that cell, he smiles. He says he's ready. Our boy knows exactly what he's walking into, and he doesn't care. Because Jang Tae-sik made one fatal mistake. He didn't kill Seo-jun when he had the chance, and now he never will. Carriage rattles up a mountain road for 3 days. Our boy doesn't sleep much. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees timers. The mage's 7 hours. The prosecutor's face going gray. His own number climbing back from 3 days to 120. Min Seo passes him dried meat and doesn't ask questions. She's got her arm out of the sling now, and her 60-year timer burns steady above her head. Headmaster spends most of the ride reading a leather-bound book he pulled from somewhere inside his robes. On the 4th morning, they reach the estate. It's not what Seo-jun expected. No white stone fortress, no iron gates, just an old manor house tucked into a valley between 2 peaks, half swallowed by pine forest and morning mist. The headmaster says it's been in his family for 16 generations. He says the academy library is impressive, but this place holds texts that were old before Shai's first stone was laid. Driver unloads their packs and the carriage rolls away toward a stable that looks older than the city of Eos. Inside the manor smells like paper and dust, and something faintly sharp. Old magic, maybe, or just centuries of candle smoke worked into the beams. The headmaster leads them through a main hall and down a spiral staircase cut into the bedrock. The stairs go deep. Min Seo counts them under her breath and gives up after 80. At the bottom, there's a door made of iron so dark it swallows the torchlight. The headmaster presses his palm to it, and the metal hums. The door swings open on hinges that haven't made a sound in 500 years. The library is circular, like his office back at the academy, but 10 times the size. Bookshelves climb 3 stories up the curved stone walls, and a single shaft of daylight falls from a crystal set into the ceiling far above. Seo-jun steps inside, and his timer flickers, just for a second. The headmaster notices and asks what he saw. Our boy says he's not sure yet. He's lying, and the headmaster knows it, but the old man doesn't push. Instead, he walks to a shelf on the far side of the room and pulls down a volume bound in something that looks uncomfortably like skin. He sets it on the reading table, a slab of black stone polished to a mirror shine, and opens it to a page marked with a strip of faded silk. The text is in a script Seo-jun doesn't recognize. The headmaster says it's Old Imperial, the court language of the dynasty that fell 7 centuries ago. He says the last Fate Seer wrote this book. He says her name was Hana. Seo-jun stares at the pages. Ink is brown in places, black in others, and the handwriting changes every few pages, sometimes precise, sometimes frantic, sometimes trailing off mid-sentence like she fell asleep at the desk. The headmaster translates aloud. Hana saw the death of an emperor at age 19 and spent the next 40 years running from everyone who wanted to own her. She rewrote the timers of kings and generals and children and beggars. She saved thousands. She also watched her entire family burn because she couldn't save them fast enough. Min Seo asks what happened to her. The headmaster turns to the last page of the book. The final entry is 3 words long. He says they translate to, "They found me." Nobody speaks for a while after that. Seo-jun runs his finger over the faded ink and feels something cold settle in his chest. Not fear, something sharper. The headmaster pulls a second volume from the shelf, thinner, newer, bound in plain leather. This one was written by his ancestor, the man who buried Hana and spent the rest of his life hunting the people who killed her. It's a combat manual. Every technique the Fate Seers developed over 5 centuries, refined and tested, and written down for whoever came next. Seo-jun opens it, and the first page is a diagram of a human body, covered in lines and notations. The headmaster points to a section near the heart. He says this is the core technique, the one every Fate Seer learns last. He says it's called the Soul Burn Covenant, and then he stops talking. Min Seo leans over Seo-jun's shoulder and squints at the diagram. She asks what it does. The headmaster looks at Seo-jun. He says the technique allows a Fate Seer to trade their own lifespan for a temporary surge of physical power. Speed, strength, reflexes, all amplified far beyond normal human limits. The cost is permanent. Every second of enhanced combat burns a year off the user's timer. Seo-jun stares at the diagram. He asks how much power we're talking about. The headmaster says Hana once used it to kill 12 assassins in under 3 minutes. He says she was 73 years old at the time. He says she walked out of the fight looking 20. Her timer had dropped from 60 years to 11. Min Seo grabs Seo-jun's wrist. She says, absolutely not. She says he just got his lifespan back, and she didn't almost die in a dungeon, so he could throw it away on some suicide technique. Headmaster doesn't argue with her. He just watches Seo-jun. Our boy is very quiet. He asks how the ritual works. The headmaster points to a second diagram, a circle of runes arranged around a central symbol that looks like an hourglass split down the middle. He says the user stands at the center and speaks the binding words. The runes activate, the covenant seals, and the user's timer becomes volatile, able to be burned at will. Min Seo lets go of his wrist. She asks if he's actually considering this. Seo-jun closes the book. He says Jung Tae-sik has an army and allies across 3 provinces and a personal grudge against everyone Seo-jun cares about. He says the headmaster can't fight this war alone. He says Min Seo's still recovering and won't be combat ready for weeks. He says someone has to be strong enough to meet what's coming. He says it might as well be him. Min Seo's timer doesn't flicker, but her jaw tightens like she's biting back something sharp. She walks out of the library without another word. The headmaster waits until her footsteps fade up the spiral stairs. He asks if Seo-jun understands what he's giving up. Our boy says he understands that he's got 120 years, and most people don't get half that. He says if burning 60 of them means the people he cares about get to keep all of theirs. The math works out fine. The headmaster studies him for a long moment. Then he nods. He says they'll begin at dawn. That night, Seo-jun doesn't sleep. He sits on the roof of the manor with his legs dangling over the edge and watches the stars wheel overhead. His timer glows steady in the corner of his vision. He thinks about everything he could do with that time. He thinks about the classmate he shoved out of the way of a falling chandelier on his first day. He thinks about Min Seo's timer dropping to seconds in the dungeon and the feeling of rewriting it while ice ripped through his veins. He thinks about the mage in chains with 7 hours left. He thinks about Hana running for 40 years and still not running fast enough. He doesn't want to die, but he wants even less to stand by while someone else does. Dawn comes gray and cold. The ritual chamber is a stone room beneath the library, older than the manor above it. The floor is covered in runes, carved so deep, Seo-jun can fit his thumb into the grooves. The headmaster has already filled them with powdered silver by the time Seo-jun arrives. Catches the torchlight and glimmers like a river of mercury. Min Seo is there. She's standing against the far wall with her arms crossed and her 60-year timer burning above her head. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't have to. Seo-jun steps into the center of the circle. The headmaster begins to speak the binding words in Old Imperial. The runes ignite one by one. The light is white, the exact same white as the timers. Climbs up Seo-jun's legs and wraps around his torso and presses against his chest like a fist made of cold fire. He doesn't scream. His timer appears in front of him, huge and bright, the numbers burning into the air like a brand. The headmaster's voice rises. The runes pulse. A pressure builds behind Seo-jun's eyes. Not pain exactly, not yet, but something enormous and close. And then the hourglass symbol splits. Covenant seals. Seo-jun's timer drops. It doesn't tick down second by second. It plummets, the numbers blurring as decades shear away. 100, 80, 60. The light snaps out. Seo-jun is on his knees and he can't remember falling. His whole body hums like a plucked wire. He looks at his timer. 60 years, exactly half. He pushes himself to his feet, and his hands are shaking. But there's something underneath the shaking now. Something coiled and ready. Like a second heartbeat, Min Seo crosses the room and punches him in the shoulder, hard. Then she walks out again. Seo-jun rubs his arm and almost smiles. The headmaster steadies himself against the wall. The ritual drained him too, and asks how it feels. Our boy flexes his fingers. He says it feels like he could run through a stone wall and come out the other side. Headmaster says that's the covenant settling. He says the real test starts now. The training grounds behind the manor are older than the library. Weathered stone posts stand in uneven rows, and the ground is packed dirt salted with ash from 1,000 old sparring sessions. The headmaster sets up a row of training dummies, wood and straw wrapped in old leather, and tells Seo-jun to hit the first one. Without the covenant, Seo-jun steps up and throws a punch. His fist sinks into the leather with a solid thump. The dummy rocks back. Decent form, decent power, nothing special. The headmaster says good. He says now burn 1 year. Seo-jun closes his eyes. The covenant is there, a knot of heat somewhere behind his ribs. He reaches for it, the way he reaches for a timer when he rewrites it. The knot loosens. Power floods his limbs like a river breaching a dam. His timer drops from 60 to 59, and he doesn't think about it. He steps forward and punches the second dummy. The dummy explodes. Straw and splintered wood spray across the training ground in a 20-foot arc. Leather wrapping tears clean in half, and the stone post behind it cracks down the middle. Seo-jun stares at his fist. His knuckles aren't even red. The headmaster sets down the notebook he was holding. He says that was 1 year. He says Hannah once burned 30 in a single fight and walked away. Min-so, watching from the manor steps, finally speaks. She says she's still mad about it. She says he's still an idiot. She says, but that was impressive. And that's how it goes for the next 3 days. Seo-jun trains until his muscles scream, and then he trains some more. He learns to control the covenant, to burn exactly as much lifespan as he needs, and not a second more. A half year for a burst of speed that carries him across the training ground faster than an arrow. 2 years for a kick that shatters a boulder the size of a horse. 5 years for a sustained combat state that lets him take on 6 training dummies at once and leave them all in splinters. His timer drops with every session. 58, 55, 52. The headmaster writes everything down. He says Seo-jun is progressing faster than any Fate Seer in the records. He says Hana took 3 months to master what Seo-jun is burning through in days. Seo-jun asks if that's a good thing. The headmaster says it depends on what's coming. On the 6th morning, a hawk arrives. It's a messenger bird from the academy, one of the trained raptors the faculty use for urgent communications. The headmaster takes the scroll from its leg and reads it in silence. His face doesn't change, but his timer flickers. Just for a heartbeat. 30 years. Then 29, then back to 30. Seo-jun notices. He asks what the message says. The headmaster rolls the scroll back up and tucks it into his sleeve. He says, Jang Tae-sik has been spotted in the eastern provinces. He says he's not hiding anymore. He says he's recruiting. The mercenary bands that operate in the borderlands have been consolidating under a single banner. A banner with the Shadow Hand insignia. 3 companies have already signed on. 2 more are in negotiations. The headmaster says Jang Tae-sik is building an army. Min-so's timer doesn't flicker, but her knuckles go white on the railing. She asks how many. The headmaster says current estimates put his forces at roughly 400 trained fighters. He says that number will double within the month. He says they're marching west. Seo-jun looks at his timer. 52 years. He looks at the shattered training dummies and the cracked stone posts and the ash-dark dirt beneath his feet. He says, let them come. And our boy isn't bluffing. Because Jang Tae-sik made the same mistake every arrogant bastard makes. He thinks he's hunting a support class student who got lucky. He doesn't know what walked out of that ritual chamber. He doesn't know about the covenant. He doesn't know about the power coiled behind Seo-jun's ribs like a second heartbeat. He doesn't know that the boy he framed for treason just traded half his lifespan for the strength to tear his whole operation apart. But he's about to find out. The headmaster's hawk returns 2 days later with worse news. The mercenary army isn't marching west anymore. They're already here. Seo-jun stands on the north wall of Eos and watches the horizon burn. Campfires dot the plains like a second field of stars, and there are hundreds of them. The first assault hits the north gate an hour before dawn. Siege ladders slam against the stone, and armored men pour up them like ants boiling out of a nest. Our boy is already moving. He burns half a year for speed and crosses the wall walk in a blur. His fist catches the first mercenary in the chest, and the man folds backward off the ladder. The second one swings a war axe at Seo-jun's head. Seo-jun reads the timer above him, 41 years, and ducks under the blow. His counterpunch shatters the man's jaw and drops him cold. He doesn't kill them. That's the line he draws before the fighting even starts. No kills. Not unless there's no other choice. A third mercenary rushes him with a short sword. Seo-jun burns 2 years and kicks the blade out of the man's hand. The sword spins into the dark, and the mercenary stares at his empty fingers. Seo-jun tells him to run. The man runs. By sunrise, the first wave breaks. 37 mercenaries are unconscious or disarmed at the base of the north wall. The city militia stares at our boy like he just grew a second head. He's breathing hard, and his timer reads 51 years. Worth it. Min-so finds him on the wall walk, rapping his knuckles. She's still favoring her left side from the troll fight, but she's got her sword out and blood on her sleeve. She says she counted 18 takedowns on her section. She asks how many he got. Seo-jun says he lost count. She calls him a show-off. He almost smiles. The second assault comes at noon. This time, they bring a battering ram, a massive iron-headed log suspended on chains and carried by 20 men. The gate shudders under the first hit. Seo-jun vaults over the wall. He burns 3 years on the way down and lands on the ram itself. The wood splinters under his feet. The mercenaries carrying it gape at him. He grins. He says they should probably drop that. They drop it. 10 of them rush him at once, and Seo-jun moves through them like water through rocks. A year for speed, 2 years for power. His fists and feet find jaws and ribs and temples. Timers flicker above every head. 62 years, 19, 44, and he reads them all without thinking. It's instinct now. He knows where every blow is going before the man throwing it knows himself. Because the timers don't just show death dates anymore. In combat, they flicker. They react. A man about to land a hit sees his timer blink. Just a fraction. And Seo-jun is already gone. The headmaster was right about his progress. He's not just reading fate anymore. He's dancing with it. The ram crew is down and the gate holds. And Seo-jun climbs back up the wall using handholds. He punches into the stone. Show off. Third assault hits at sunset, and this one is different. The mercenaries are better armed, better armor, enchanted blades, formation fighting. These aren't Borderlands rabble. These are Jang Tae-sik's core companies, and leading them is a man Seo-jun has never seen before. He's lean and weathered with close-cropped gray hair and a scar that runs from his left eyebrow to his jaw. His name is Yoon Kyung-min. Seo-jun knows this because Min-so hisses it through her teeth. She says Yoon Kyung-min is the commander of the Iron Vow Company. She says he's killed 17 ranked hunters in single combat. She says his ability is something unnatural. Seo-jun looks at Yoon's timer. It is not steady. Every other timer he's ever seen has been a fixed number, a solid white glow sitting still above someone's head. Yoon Kyung-min's timer is flickering like a candle in a storm. 62 years, then 48, then 71, then 12. It jumps and stutters and resets and drops again, and Seo-jun can't pin it down. What the hell is this guy? Yoon Kyung-min steps through the chaos of the third assault like he's taking a walk. His men part around him. A militia archer looses an arrow at his head. Yoon's timer drops to 4 years and he moves. Not fast like Seo-jun moves. Not enhanced speed. He moves like he already knew the arrow was coming. Like he's been practicing that exact dodge for a decade. The arrow misses by a handspan and Yoon keeps walking. Seo-jun jumps down from the wall to meet it. Two of them stand in the killing ground between the gate and the siege lines. Fires burn on either side. The noise of the battle fades to a dull roar. Yoon Kyung-min looks at Seo-jun with tired eyes. He says he's heard about the Fate Seer. He says Jang Tae-sik told him the boy could see death coming. He says he didn't believe it until now. Seo-jun asks what his ability is. Yoon's timer jumps from 18 years to 61 and back to 23 in the space of a breath. He says he can burn his own lifespan for power, just like Seo-jun. But there's a difference. Yoon Kyung-min can't control it. His ability is a curse. Every time he fights, his lifespan burns away in unpredictable chunks. He never knows how much he's spending. A single dodge might cost him a month. A killing blow might cost him a decade. That's why his timer flickers. That's why he looks 80 years old when he's barely 45. He's been burning himself alive for 20 years. Seo-jun stares at the man's timer. 4 years. Now 31. Now 9. It's a death sentence that resets itself 100 times a minute. Yoon says Jang Tae-sik promised him a cure. He says Tae-sik told him the Shadow Hand had artifacts that could stabilize his condition. He says that's why he took the contract. He says he doesn't care about the money. He just wants to stop burning. Seo-jun makes a decision. He asks Yoon if he wants the cure now. Yoon's eyes narrow. He asks what the boy means. Seo-jun takes a step forward. He says he can rewrite death timers. He says he can lock Yoon's lifespan at a stable value. He says the burning stops. Yoon asks what the catch is. Seo-jun says no catch. He says he only has one rule. He doesn't kill. He says he can't reduce a timer, but he can extend one. He can give Yoon back the years his curse has been eating. Yoon Kyung-min stands very still. His timer flickers. 6 years, then 44, then 19. He asks why Seo-jun would help an enemy. Seo-jun says he's not his enemy. He says Yoon is a man who's been used by powerful people who promised him things they couldn't deliver. He says he knows what that feels like. Yoon laughs. It's a bitter, ragged sound. He says the boy is either a saint or a fool. Min-so, watching from the wall, yells down that he's definitely a fool. Seo-jun ignores her. He holds out his hand. Yoon Kyung-min looks at the hand. His timer flickers again. 2 years. 2 years left if this fight continues the way it's going. He takes the hand. Seo-jun grabs Yoon's wrist and reaches for the covenant. The knot of heat behind his ribs loosens. He finds Yoon's timer in his mind's eye, that stuttering, broken number that won't hold still, and he grabs it. He doesn't push it up gently, he locks it. The pain hits him like a railroad spike through the skull. This is nothing like rewriting Min Seo's timer. That was a clean extension. A single thread pulled and lengthened. Yoon's timer is a tangled snarl of burnt-out connections and scarred-over pathways. Seo-jun has to force every single strand back into alignment. He has to staple the man's lifespan to a fixed point and hold it there while the covenant screams through his bones. His nose bleeds. His vision whites out at the edges. His own timer drops. 50 years. 48. 47. He doesn't stop. He locks the timer at 60 years and pours his own lifespan into the gap. 45 years. 43. 40. The white light behind his eyes goes blinding, and then it cuts out. Seo-jun lets go of Yoon's wrist and staggers backward. Min Seo catches him before he hits the ground. She's screaming something at him, but he can't hear her through the ringing in his ears. His timer reads 38 years. He spent 14 years locking Yoon Kyung-min's lifespan in place, but when he looks up, Yoon's timer is steady. 60 years. A solid white glow. For the first time since Yoon was 17 years old, his curse is quiet. The mercenary commander stares at his own hands. He flexes his fingers. He breathes in like a man who's been drowning for 20 years and just broke the surface. He asks what Seo-jun did. Seo-jun wipes blood off his lip and says he paid a debt. He says Yoon doesn't owe Jang Tae-sik anything anymore. Yoon Kyung-min looks at the burning siege lines behind him. He looks at his own men waiting for orders. He looks at the boy who just gave up 14 years of his life for a stranger. And he makes a decision. He turns around and shouts to his company. He tells them to stand down. He tells them the contract is broken. The Iron Vow Company, all 200 of them, lower their weapons. Jang Tae-sik's siege collapses 10 minutes later. Without Yoon's core companies holding the line, the remaining mercenary bands break and scatter into the countryside. The city of Eos is still standing. Min Seo helps Seo-jun limp back through the gate. She's still yelling at him, but her voice is shaky. She calls him the stupidest genius she's ever met. She says he can't keep burning his lifespan for every sad story he meets. Seo-jun says he didn't burn it for a sad story. He says he burned it for an ally. That night, Yoon Kyung-min sits across from Seo-jun in the headmaster's office. The headmaster pours tea with steady hands and listens. Yoon talks. He tells them everything. Jang Tae-sik isn't the top of the food chain. He's a middleman. The real power behind the mercenary army is an organization that's been operating in the shadows for centuries. They recruit people with unique abilities, rare professions, unnatural gifts, curses that pass for talents. They offer them protection and resources. And if anyone refuses the offer, they disappear. Seo-jun asks what the organization is called. Yoon sets down his tea. He says they call themselves the Shadow Hand. The headmaster's timer flickers, just once. Seo-jun sees it. Yoon says the Shadow Hand has been hunting Fate Seers for 500 years. He says the last one before Seo-jun was murdered by their agents. He says they don't just want to kill Seo-jun, they want to capture him. They want to study his ability. They want to find out if a Fate Seer's power can be extracted and transferred. Because the leader of the Shadow Hand, a noble named Hwang Jae-won, has been alive for 2 centuries, and he's running out of stolen time. Yoon says Hwang's timer should have run out 150 years ago, but he's been draining the life force of captured ability users to extend his own lifespan. A Fate Seer is the ultimate prize. Someone who can see and rewrite death itself. Hwang Jae-won wants Seo-jun's power, and he's willing to burn the whole kingdom to get it. 38 years. He looks at the headmaster. He looks at Min Seo, who's standing by the door with her arms crossed and her jaw tight. He asks Yoon where the Shadow Hand's main stronghold is. Yoon says it's in the Iron Peak Mountains, 3 days ride north, heavily fortified, protected by enchantments that hide it from scrying and conventional scouting. He says he can draw a map. Seo-jun says they're going to need it. Because he isn't waiting for Hwang Jae-won to come to him. He's taking the fight to the Shadow Hand. The map is the first thing that hits the table. Yoon Kyung-min unrolls a length of cured leather across the headmaster's desk. It's covered in markings made with charcoal and something that looks disturbingly like dried blood. He says he drew this from memory during the ride back from the siege lines. The Iron Peak Mountains are a jagged scar of black stone running north-south about 80 miles from Eos. Yoon's finger lands on a narrow pass between 2 peaks marked with a serpent symbol. He says that's the only way in unless you can fly. Stronghold itself is built into the mountain, not on it, inside it. The Shadow Hand hollowed out an entire peak over the course of a century. What looks like natural rock from the outside is actually a fortress with walls 30 feet thick. Min Seo leans over the map and her jaw tightens. She asks how many guards. Yoon says about 300 inside the mountain at any given time. But the real problem isn't the guard, it's the enchantments. The entire stronghold is wrapped in a detection web that alerts the inner sanctum the moment anyone crosses the perimeter. Scrying spells bounce off it like light off a mirror. Conventional scouts who get too close don't come back. Seo-jun traces the pass with his finger and asks if there's a blind spot. Yoon says there's one. A sewage channel cut through the eastern face of the mountain, about 200 feet below the main gate. It's narrow, it stinks of rot, and it's patrolled by sentries every 90 minutes. But it's the only entrance that isn't covered by the detection web. The headmaster sets down his tea. He says they'll need a distraction, the kind that makes 300 guards look the wrong way at exactly the right time. Yoon cracks his knuckles and says he might know a guy. Dawn breaks cold and gray over the Iron Peak Range 3 days later. Seo-jun crouches behind a boulder with Min Seo at his side, and the headmaster a few paces behind them. The mountain looms above them like a clenched fist of black granite. Snow clings to the upper ridges, but the lower slopes are bare rock and dead scrub. Yoon is already in position with 50 hand-picked Iron Vow veterans on the western approach. Their job is simple: make enough noise to pull every guard on the outer wall toward the west gate. Seo-jun checks his timer, 38 years. He's not planning to spend any more today, but he stopped planning things about 3 near-death experiences ago. The signal comes at exactly the 8th hour. A fireball streaks into the sky above the western ridge and detonates with a crack that echoes through the peaks. War horns sound. Yoon's men start shouting and clashing steel against steel in a performance loud enough to wake the dead. Seo-jun watches the wall. For 30 seconds, nothing happens. Then the guards start moving, dark shapes scrambling along the battlements toward the western tower. Min-seo says that's their window. The 3 of them break cover and sprint for the eastern face. The sewage channel is exactly as unpleasant as Yoon promised. It's a dark slit in the rock, barely wide enough for a grown man to squeeze through sideways. The smell hits Seo-jun before he's within 10 feet of it. He doesn't gag. He's smelled worse things in the past 2 weeks. Min-seo goes first because she's the fastest and because she insisted. She vanishes into the darkness without a sound. Seo-jun follows and the headmaster brings up the rear. The channel is wet and freezing, and it twists upward at a brutal angle. Every 20 feet, Seo-jun has to brace his back against one wall and his feet against the other just to keep from sliding down. Min-seo's voice drifts back in a whisper. She says there's a grate about 40 feet ahead. She's already cut through it. Seo-jun hauls himself through the opening she made and lands in a crouch on a stone floor, slick with something he doesn't want to identify. They're in a supply corridor. Barrels of preserved meat and sacks of grain line the wall. The air is cold and stale, and it hums with a faint vibration Seo-jun can feel in his teeth. The headmaster emerges from the grate and straightens his robes with the calm dignity of a man who did not just crawl through 300 feet of mountain sewage. He says the inner sanctum will be at the heart of the mountain. Downward. Always downward with these people. They move. Corridors of the Shadow Hand stronghold are a labyrinth of smooth carved stone, lit by glowing blue crystals set into the walls at intervals. It's eerily quiet. The sounds of Yoon's distraction on the west side don't reach this deep. Every 50 paces, Seo-jun stops and checks the timers of anyone within range. Most read decades. Guards on long contracts and servants who've spent their whole lives inside this mountain. He doesn't see anything below 10 years. Then they round a corner, and the corridor opens into a vast circular chamber, and Seo-jun's stomach drops. The hall is enormous, a domed space carved out of the living rock with a ceiling that vanishes into shadow 100 feet above them. But the size isn't what makes him stop dead. It's the cages, dozens of them. Iron-barred cells arranged in concentric rings around a central dais. Inside each cage is a person, men and women of every age. Some are children. Their eyes are open, but they're not moving. They're not blinking. They're not doing anything except breathing in shallow mechanical rhythms. Seo-jun sees the timers above their heads. 5 years, 2 years, 18 months, 11 months, 6 months. Some read weeks. A girl who can't be older than 12 has a timer that reads 4 days. Min-seo's voice is barely a whisper. She asks what they're doing to them. The headmaster points to the central dais. A glowing orb about the size of a human head floats above a pedestal of black stone. It pulses with a sickly green light. Streams of the same green energy flow from each cage toward the orb like tributaries feeding a polluted river. The headmaster says it's a life siphon, an artifact that drains the life force of anyone within its web and channels it to a single recipient. Seo-jun's eyes track the flow of energy. The green streams don't stop at the orb. A thicker conduit of light runs upward from it and disappears into the ceiling. He follows it with his gaze, and that's when he sees him. A man stands on a balcony carved into the upper wall of the chamber. He's tall and gaunt, with silver hair pulled back tight against his skull. His robes are black silk embroidered with silver thread, in patterns that shift when Seo-jun tries to look at them directly. His face is smooth, unnaturally smooth for a man who should be ancient. But it's his timer that makes Seo-jun's blood run cold. 200 years. The number hangs above his head in glowing white digits. It's not flickering like Yoon's was. It's not unstable. It's a solid, steady, obscene 200 years. The headmaster breathes the name. Hwang Jae-won. The man on the balcony smiles. He speaks and his voice carries through the chamber with a resonance that isn't natural. He says he was wondering when the new Fate Seer would come to him. He says they always come eventually. He says it's in their nature. Seo-jun steps forward into the chamber. Min-seo grabs his arm, but he shakes her off. He looks at the prisoners in their cages. He looks at the orb pulsing with stolen life. He looks at the 200-year timer hanging above the man who's been draining people for a century and a half. He says he's not here to be captured. He's here to shut this place down. Hwang Jae-won laughs. It's a dry sound like bones rattling in a box. He says the last Fate Seer said the same thing. He says that man screamed for 3 days before his heart finally gave out. Seo-jun doesn't answer with words. He moves. Min-seo and the headmaster fan out behind him. The guards pour into the chamber from hidden doors, at least 40 of them armed with curved blades and dark crystal stave. Seo-jun sees their timers. He sees the gaps between them. He sees the exact moment the first guard will swing, and he's already past it before the blade completes its arc. He doesn't fight to kill. He fights to reach the orb. Min-seo covers his flank. Her sword is a blur of silver light, and every guard who gets close to her gets introduced to the floor. The headmaster's hands weave patterns in the air, and barriers of blue energy snap into place, blocking the stave fire from the upper balconies. Seo-jun reaches the dais. The orb pulses 3 feet from his face. The green light is so bright up close that it hurts to look at. He can feel the life force radiating from it, a wrongness that makes his skin crawl and his teeth ache. Above him, Hwang Jae-won's smile finally drops. He shouts an order to stop the boy, but it's too late. Seo-jun reaches out and touches the orb. The contact is like grabbing a live power line. The green energy floods into him, and for one horrifying second, he thinks it's going to drain him too. But the Fate Seer ability is older than this artifact. It recognizes stolen life. It recognizes the theft, and it knows how to reverse it. Seo-jun doesn't rewrite the orb's timer. The orb doesn't have a timer. What he does is push. He pushes his own energy into the artifact, like forcing water backward through a pipe. The orb shudders. The green light flickers, and then every stream of energy flowing from the cages reverses direction. The prisoners gasp. Their eyes snap open. Their timers start climbing, weeks becoming months, becoming years. The girl who had 4 days suddenly has 60 years. Hwang Jae-won screams. His 200-year timer flickers. It drops to 180, 160, 140. The orb cracks. Green light bleeds through the fissures like poison leaking from a wound. Seo-jun shouts for Min-seo and the headmaster to get the prisoners out. He can't hold this much longer. The artifact is fighting him now. It's been draining people for over a century, and it doesn't want to stop. Pressure builds behind his eyes until he's seeing spots. His timer drops. 37, 36, 35. But he doesn't let go. Min-seo kicks open the nearest cage and starts hauling prisoners to their feet. The headmaster's barriers are cracking under the sustained fire from the guards. One of the stave bolts punches through and scorches his sleeve. He doesn't flinch. He just keeps weaving. The prisoners start moving. Some of them can barely walk. Others grab weapons from fallen guards and turn to fight. Seo-jun sees a man who was catatonic 2 minutes ago put a blade through a shadow hand guard's shoulder. 34 years. The orb's cracks spread like a spider web. Hwang Jae-won is coming down from the balcony now. He's not walking. He's descending on a column of twisted green light. His timer is at 130 and dropping. But he's not panicking the way he should be. He looks furious. He looks murderous. But he doesn't look scared. Seo-jun realizes why a second later. The artifact isn't Hwang's only source of stolen life. It's just his emergency reserve. The noble's timer stabilizes at 120 and stops dropping. Hwang raises his hand. The air around Seo-jun thickens. His movements slow. He's still touching the orb, but now he's also trapped in some kind of temporal field. Hwang's voice is cold. He says the boy is powerful. He says he'll enjoy peeling that power out of him, one layer at a time. Min-seo screams Seo-jun's name. She tries to charge Hwang, but a wave of distorted time knocks her back like a physical blow. The headmaster's barrier shatters. This is bad. This is very bad. But Seo-jun is still touching the orb, and he's finally figured out what he can do to it that Hwang won't expect. He doesn't try to reverse the flow anymore. He doesn't try to push against the artifact's hunger. Instead, he feeds it. He opens the connection wide and pours his own lifespan directly into the cracked green orb. Not a trickle, a flood. 10 years. His timer drops from 34 to 24 in a single gut-wrenching instant. The orb absorbs the offering. It's designed to take life force, and it takes what he gives it. But the Fate Seer's life force isn't like the prisoner's. It's saturated with the ability that lets Seo-jun see and rewrite death. The orb isn't built to process that. It isn't built to process anything except passive stolen energy. The artifact overloads. The cracks in its surface blaze white hot. The green light turns blinding, and then it turns to shrapnel. The orb detonates. Hwang Jae-won's temporal field collapses. Seo-jun is thrown backward off the dais and hits the stone floor hard enough to crack ribs. His ears are ringing. His vision is a smear of dust and smoke and dying green light. But he can see the prisoners' timers through the chaos. They're all climbing. Every single one of them. The siphon is broken. The connection to Hwang is severed. Hwang Jae-won stands at the edge of the destroyed dais, staring at the fragments of his artifact. His timer reads 120 years. Still unnaturally long. Still obscene. But he was at 200 when he walked into this chamber, and now he's bleeding time he can't replace. He looks at Seo-jun. His eyes are pits. He says this isn't over. He says the Shadow Hand has been hunting Fate Seers for 500 years, and they'll hunt this one for 500 more. He says Seo-jun will die screaming just like all the others. Then he raises his hand, and the shadows at his feet rise up and swallow him whole. He vanishes. Seo-jun tries to stand, and his ribs scream at him. Min-seo is at his side in an instant, hauling him up with one arm while keeping her sword ready with the other. She asks if he's insane. She says he just spent 10 years. She says he's down to 24. Seo-jun wipes blood off his face and says he'll make them count. The headmaster shouts that the guards are regrouping. More are pouring in from the upper levels. The explosion drew every Shadow Hand operative in the mountain. They have maybe 2 minutes before they're completely overrun. The prisoners are free, but most of them can barely walk. This is not a fight they can win. Seo-jun makes a call. He tells Min-seo to take point and clear a path to the sewage channel. He tells the headmaster to cover their retreat with every barrier spell he's got left. He tells himself he's not dying in this mountain. The retreat is chaos. Min-seo cuts through a dozen guards in the first corridor. Her sword work is brutal and efficient. She's not fighting for honor. She's fighting for distance. The headmaster's barriers buy them seconds at a time. The freed prisoners stumble along behind them, and the ones who can fight pick up weapons from the fallen. Seo-jun brings up the rear. His ribs are cracked. His timer is at 24, and he's running on adrenaline and spite. A guard lunges at him from a side passage. Seo-jun sees the timer above his head flicker. The man is about to die. Not by Seo-jun's hand, by the collapsing ceiling. A chunk of stone the size of a wagon wheel breaks loose from the archway above them. Seo-jun shoves the guard out of the way. The stone crashes down where they both would have been standing. The guard stares at him. His timer reads 40 more years. Seo-jun doesn't stop to explain. He just runs. The sewage channel is ahead. Min-seo is already shoving prisoners through the opening. Yoon Kyung-min's war horns are still sounding on the western slope. The distraction is holding. The last prisoner drops through the grate. The headmaster follows. Min-seo grabs Seo-jun's arm and drags him through after her. They slide down the channel in a controlled fall. Freezing water and ancient filth and jagged rock. When they burst out into the gray mountain daylight, Seo-jun sucks in air like a drowning man. Yoon's signal flares again. His men are pulling back from the western wall. The mission is over. The Shadow Hand stronghold is burning. Smoke pours from the ventilation shafts, and 3 of the outer towers have collapsed. The life siphon is destroyed. 87 prisoners are alive and free, and their timers all read decades. Seo-jun stands at the base of the mountain and watches the smoke rise. Min-seo stands beside him. She doesn't yell at him this time. She just says his name. She says it like a warning and a promise at the same time. 24 years. He looks at the freed prisoners being helped toward the waiting supply wagons by Yoon's veterans. He looks at the headmaster whose robes are scorched and torn, but whose eyes are bright. He looks at the mountain where, somewhere inside the darkness, Hwang Jae-won is still alive and still holding 120 years of stolen time. He says they're not done. He says this was just one stronghold. He says the Shadow Hand has been building its power for 5 centuries, and they just kicked over one anthill. Hwang Jae-won will come for him. That's not a guess, that's a certainty. But Seo-jun isn't the scared academy student who walked into a selection circle and got laughed at anymore. He's a Fate Seer who just walked into the heart of enemy territory and broke their most valuable weapon. He's down to 24 years, but he knows how to use every single one of them. Min-seo asks what the plan is now. Seo-jun turns away from the mountain. He says they go home. He says they regroup. He says they train. And then he says something that makes even the headmaster raise an eyebrow. He says they're going to need more allies. A lot more. Because the next time he faces Hwang Jae-won, it won't be a hit and run in a stronghold. It'll be a war. The mountain air is still, and then it isn't. The shadows at the base of the cliff detach from the rock and surge forward like living oil. Seo-jun barely has time to shove Min Seo aside before the first tendril wraps around his ankle and yanks him off his feet. He hits the ground hard, and the impact rattles his cracked ribs. The world blurs. When his vision clears, Hwang Jae-won is standing 20 feet away with both hands raised and his eyes burning white. He didn't flee after all. He just needed a better battlefield. Min Seo lunges. Her blade is halfway to Hwang's throat when the air around her thickens into amber honey and she freezes mid-stride. Her sword is still raised. Her teeth are still bared. But she is trapped in a bubble of slowed time and she cannot move an inch. The headmaster tries a barrier spell. The incantation dies on his lips as another tendril of shadow punches through his guard and slams him into the cliff face. He crumples. His timer flickers but holds. Hwang Jae-won smiles. It's a thin, patient smile. The smile of a man who has been hunting Fate Seers for 500 years and has never lost one. He tells Seo-jun this is a family tradition. He says he killed the last Fate Seer in this exact spot 5 centuries ago, and he buried the body under what later became the Academy's eastern tower. He says he's going to bury this one under the western gate. Seo-jun gets to his feet. His timer reads 24 years. His ribs are a symphony of pain. Min Seo is frozen. The headmaster is down. Yoon's war horns are too far away to matter. This is not a fight he can win with strength, so he doesn't try. He reads the timers. The numbers above Hwang's head are wrong. They don't hold steady like a normal person's. They flicker. One moment they read 180 years. The next they jump to 80, and 200, then 50. The fluctuation isn't random. It's a rhythm, a heartbeat of stolen time that pulses through the artifact embedded in Hwang's chest. Seo-jun can see it now, a fist-sized orb of compressed shadow sitting right where a human heart should be. Every pulse sends a ripple through the air. Every ripple is a half second where the world around Hwang slows down. That's his window. Hwang flicks his wrist, and a blade of solidified darkness screams towards Seo-jun's throat. Seo-jun doesn't dodge. He watches the timer above Hwang's head, waits for the flicker. When the numbers dip toward 50, he moves. The blade passes through the space where his throat was a half second ago, close enough to shave skin. Hwang's smile tightens. He asks if that was luck. Seo-jun doesn't answer. He's already reading the next ripple. The artifact pulses. The timer jumps. Seo-jun is already 3 steps to the left when the ground where he was standing erupts in a geyser of shadow glass. This is the fight now. Not strength against strength, timing against timing. A Fate Seer reading the one moment in the cycle where the 500-year-old monster in front of him is vulnerable. Hwang sends a volley of dark spears, and Seo-jun walks through them like he's parting rain. He's not faster than the attack. He's earlier. He knows where each spear will be before it forms, because the timer tells him when Hwang's focus wavers, and the waver always comes a half beat before. Strike. Hwang's expression shifts from amusement to irritation. He calls Seo-jun clever. He says, clever Fate Seers die tired. Then he spreads his arms and the shadow beneath his feet expands into a lake. The entire plateau goes dark. Every rock, every scrub of grass, every patch of gray mountain sky, swallowed. Seo-jun can't see the ground anymore. He can't see his own hands. He can only see the timers floating in the black. His own, 23 years and dropping. Min Seo's, trapped in amber but holding at 60. The headmaster's, flickering but stable. And Hwang's, a strobe of broken numbers that is the only light in the void. Hwang speaks from everywhere at once. He tells Seo-jun the Shadow Lake is his personal dominion. He says every Fate Seer he has ever killed spent their last moments blind in this darkness. He says Seo-jun will be no different. Seo-jun closes his eyes. He doesn't need them. The timers are all the light he requires. He reads the ripple, takes 2 steps right. A spear of shadow passes through the space he vacated. He reads the next ripple, drops to one knee. A blade whistles over his skull, reads again, rolls forward into a sprint. The darkness is screaming around him, and he is already gone before every attack lands. Hwang's voice loses its calm. He asks how a boy with 24 years is dodging 5 centuries of practice. Seo-jun opens his eyes. The timers are all he can see, but they're enough. He tells Hwang that 500 years doesn't teach you to fight. It teaches you to be afraid of dying. And Hwang is terrified. The artifact in his chest is not a gift. It's a leash. Every year it gives him, it takes 2 from someone else. He has been running from his own death for half a millennium, and the running has made him predictable. Seo-jun charges. He burns 2 years for speed. His timer drops to 22. The world sharpens into a tunnel of white numbers and black shadow, and at the end of the tunnel is the one thing that matters. The artifact. Pulsing in Hwang's chest like a second heartbeat, Seo-jun reads the ripple, waits for the flicker that drops Hwang's timer below 60. When it comes, he is already in the air with his fist cocked back and every ounce of those 2 burned years concentrated in his knuckles. He hits the artifact. The impact shatters the shadow lake. The darkness peels back like burnt paper, and the gray mountain daylight floods in, and Hwang Jae-won is staggering backward with his hands pressed to his chest and his eyes wide with something that looks a lot like fear. The artifact is cracked. Not broken, but cracked. Hwang screams. The sound is not human. It is 5 centuries of stolen life expressing its displeasure all at once. Cracked artifact pulses, and the pulse throws Seo-jun 40 feet across the plateau. He hits the ground and slides, and for a long, terrible moment, he cannot breathe. His timer is 22 years. His ribs are worse than before. His left arm is numb from the impact. He pushes himself up anyway. Hwang is still standing. The crack in the artifact is sealing itself. Threads of shadow are knitting the fissure closed, and as they knit, Hwang's timer climbs. 200, 250, 300. The stolen years are flooding back into him, and he is drawing them from somewhere. And Seo-jun realizes with cold clarity where. The prisoners they freed. The ones who are still close enough to the mountain to be drained. Hwang is pulling life from the 87 people Seo-jun just saved. Seo-jun makes his decision before he finishes the thought. He reaches for his own timer, not to read it, to rewrite it. The technique he found in the headmaster's library. The one that cost him 60 years the first time he used it. The one that drops his lifespan to 0 in exchange for a single moment of absolute power. He knows the cost. He knows exactly what rewriting his own timer to 0 means. He does it anyway. The pain is not ice this time. It is fire. A column of white heat that starts in his chest and burns outward through every nerve and every bone and every inch of skin until he is not a person anymore. He is a weapon. His timer blazes. The numbers spin. Drop past 10 and past 5 and past 1, and then they hit 0, and the world goes silent, and Seo-jun moves. He crosses the distance between himself and Hwang in the space between heartbeats. The shadow tendrils that rise to stop him are too slow. The time-slowing field Hwang throws up in desperation does not slow him at all. He is outside time now, outside fate. A Fate Seer who has burned his entire lifespan for one strike, and the strike is already landing before Hwang Jae-won finishes raising his hands to defend. Seo-jun's fist connects with the artifact. The crack he put in it before shatters wide open. The threads of shadow trying to seal it snap. The orb of compressed darkness that has been Hwang's heart for 500 years explodes outward in a shockwave of white light and stolen years. And the sound of 100,000 lifetimes being released all at once. Hwang Jae-won screams. The scream is 5 centuries long. It is every victim he ever drained, every Fate Seer he ever hunted, every prisoner whose life he siphoned through that artifact and into his own body. The scream builds and builds, and then it cuts off. The artifact is gone. Hwang's chest is a crater of pale scar tissue where the orb used to be. His timer reads 0. He falls. The impact of his body hitting the stone is the only sound on the plateau. Seo-jun lands on his knees. His own timer is still at 0, and his body knows it. He can feel the edges of his vision going dark. He can feel his heartbeat slowing. He is dying. He knew he would. He made that choice, and he does not regret it. Minso is screaming his name. Time bubble shattered when the artifact did, and she is running toward him with her sword discarded and her face a mask of terror. The headmaster is struggling to his feet with blood running down his forehead. Yoon's war horns are getting louder. The cavalry is finally arriving. They are too late to help and exactly on time to witness. Seo-jun's timer stays at 0. He thinks this is fine. He thinks 24 years is a fair trade for a monster who drained thousands. He thinks Minseo will be furious with him, and that makes him smile, even as his vision tunnels down to a single point of light. Then the light gets brighter. The fragments of the artifact, the ones that scattered across the plateau when it shattered, they are glowing. Each shard is a tiny sun of compressed time, and they are all turning towards Seo-jun like iron filings toward a magnet. The years Hwang stole. Lives he drained. They were never destroyed. They were only stored. And now the storage is broken, and the years need somewhere to go. They choose him. The first shard touches his chest, and his timer jumps from 0 to 1 year. The second shard hits and it climbs to 5, then 10, then 20. The fragments pour into him in a river of white light, and his timer spins upward faster than he can read it. 40 years, 60, 90. The stolen time is returning to the world, and Seo-jun is the conduit. and every second Hwang Jae-won ever took from someone else is flowing through. The Fate Seer who killed him. The flow stops. Seo-jun gasps. His lungs work. His heart is beating. His ribs are still cracked. His left arm is still numb. But he is alive. He is alive, and his timer reads 120 years, exactly where it was before he ever learned the forbidden technique. Min Seo reaches him. She drops to her knees and grabs his shoulders, and for a long moment, she doesn't say anything at all. She just stares at his face like she's checking to make sure he's still in there. Then she punches him in the arm, hard. She tells him if he ever does that again, she'll kill him herself. Seo-jun laughs. It hurts. He doesn't stop. The headmaster limps over with his robes in tatters, and his barrier staff cracked in half, but his eyes are bright. He looks at the crater where Hwang Jae-won fell. He looks at the fragments of the artifact scattered across the stone. He looks at Seo-jun with 120 years burning above his head, and he says one thing. He says the Shadow Hand is finished. Without Hwang, without the Life Siphon, without their leader, they are just scattered operatives with no one to report to. He says it will take years to root them all out, but the war is already won. The head is cut off. Yoon Kyung-min crests the ridge with 50 veterans behind him. They are bloodied and exhausted, and when they see the tableau on the plateau, Yoon stops. He looks at Hwang's body. He looks at Seo-jun, sitting in the middle of a field of glowing glass shards, with Min Seo still gripping his shoulders. He looks at the headmaster's smile. Then he laughs. A deep, rolling laugh that echoes off the mountainside. He says he knew he picked the right side. He says the Iron Vow Company is going to need a lot more men for the cleanup. Seo-jun gets to his feet. Min Seo helps him. He doesn't let go of his arm. Below them on the trail, the freed prisoners are watching the smoke rise from the stronghold and beginning to understand that they are truly free. Their timers are decades long. Their futures are their own. The supply wagons are loaded. The veterans are forming up for the march home. The Shadow Hand's greatest weapon is a field of cooling glass on a mountain plateau. Seo-jun looks at his timer. 120 years. A full lifespan. The exact number he started with before any of this began. He looks at the headmaster and says it's time to go home. He says they have a lot to rebuild. He says the Shadow Hand was operating for 5 centuries, and dismantling the whole network will take years. He says they're going to need every ally they can find. Then he looks at Min Seo. She's still gripping his arm. Her knuckles are white. He tells her he's fine. She tells him he's a liar. He doesn't argue. The column forms up on the trail. Yoon's veterans take point and rearguard with the freed prisoners in the center. The headmaster rides at the front with his cracked staff across his knees and a look of profound satisfaction on his weathered face. Min Seo rides beside Seo-jun, and she doesn't let him out of her sight for the entire journey back to Eos. Behind them, the mountain burns. The Shadow Hand's stronghold is a funeral pyre. Hwang Jae-won's body lies where it fell, and there is no one left to bury it. The artifact that powered 5 centuries of murder is shards on the stone. The Life Siphon is destroyed. The prisoners are free. Kang Seo-jun rides west with 120 years above his head and a lifetime's worth of enemies still scattered across the continent, and the absolute certainty that every single one of them now knows his name. He's counting on it.